Chapter 1678. The Gu Mingming now was no longer the young lady who cried the entire night at the bonfire party during her coming-of-age ceremony when she had just arrived in the beast world. She had faced too much bloodshed in the beast world, so much so that she could think rationally and calmly when faced with life and death. Just like now. Elvis jumped up from the bed and pounced towards Harold. Harold immediately waved the walking stick in his hand and slashed at Elvis with the blade. But he was just a normal person. How could he fight against Elvis, who had the power of a beast king and had been through hundreds of battles? Before he could swing his walking stick halfway, he was already firmly stepped on by Elvis's four limbs. Harold was so shocked that he was tongue-tied. He could not understand how a human could suddenly turn into a huge wolf. The sharp fangs and dripping saliva in front of him magnified his fear infinitely. Only someone who had been squashed by a wolf at such a close distance would understand how terrifying that feeling of near death was. Elvis did not have the leisure to admire his struggle before death. He cleanly bit off his neck and threw his body out of the window. Then he transformed back into a human without a single speck of dirt on him. He was naked, with a head of thick black hair casually draped behind him. It was like a cloud dyed with ink, giving off a unique charm. The hideous bloodstains in the room were set off by the gentleness that only belonged to Gu Mingming, making it look like two red spider lilies blossoming on both sides of the yellow springs. And he was a fairy standing among the flowers. Dangerous, yet full of temptation. Because of his transformation, Elvis could no longer wear the clothes he was originally wearing. So, Gu Mingming casually pulled down the curtains and asked Elvis to tear it into a piece of cloth of suitable size. Then she wrapped it around her waist to act as a temporary beast skin skirt. This way of dressing made Elvis feel at ease, much more comfortable than those clothes that restricted his movements. "Wait for me here, I'll go settle some things and be back soon." Gu Mingming chuckled and asked, "Do you need me to call Leah over to help you?" Elvis shook his head gently, then planted a light kiss on Gu Mingming's forehead. "I'm your first partner, I must have the ability to protect you independently." Gu Mingming knew that males had their own pride. In the beast world, they must have the ability to hunt and defend against external enemies. In modern times, they also needed to have the strength to protect their women. She could not stop Elvis from doing it. He was a wolf, not a pet dog that she kept by her side. She would never keep him on a dog's leash and make him wag his tail at her side. She wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck and kissed him lightly. "Be careful." Elvis nodded and kissed her lips again. He told her to lie down and rest for a while. After all, the effects of the medicine in her body had not completely dissipated. After tucking her in, Elvis turned around and left. With Harold's head in his hand, he walked out of Gu Mingming's room, leaving bloody footprints behind. Gu Mingming did not resist the control of the drug in her body anymore. She relaxed her nerves and slowly fell asleep. When she woke up again, the four men in the house had gathered and were sitting by her bed. "Drink some water." The moment she opened her eyes, Elvis helped her sit up and sent warm water to her lips, gently moistening her dry throat. Out of topic. To explain, Harold's neck was bitten off by Elvis and his body was thrown out of the window, but his head was still in the room. That was why it was said that he carried Harold's head out. Babies, don't be confused. Why did you say he carried his head after throwing it out? Chapter 1679. Gu Mingming sat up and drank some water. Leah walked up to her, cupped her little face and kissed it. "I tested your blood just now. It's just a normal anesthetic. You just need to drink more water to metabolize it and you'll be fine." "Yeah." Gu Mingming nodded. Actually, the effects of the anesthetic had almost worn off and she did not feel much after sleeping. "When did you guys arrive?" Gu Mingming looked at the three men who did not look too good and asked. Snake laughed coldly, asking, "When did you hope that we would arrive? Or, did you hope that we would not appear at all?" Was he angry? Gu Mingming blinked her eyes and looked at Snake's cold smile, feeling a little guilty. "How could that be?" "I just because Elvis is your first partner you let him do whatever he wants, isn't that right?" Snakel interrogated. Gu Mingming shrunk her neck. She knew that she would definitely be scolded for not calling all her partners over at the first instance after such a thing happened. Her partners were just that weird. If you had good food to eat, fun to play with or any other good things, it was fine not to call them. But if you didn't call them when you were in trouble and especially when you were in danger, come at me if you have any complaints. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming in his arms, his entire body exuding a strong aura. He would not allow anyone to criticize or lecture Gu Mingming, no matter what she did wrong. Moreover, it was him who did not protect Gu Mingming that gave Harold the chance to take advantage of her today. Xiaoming did not do anything wrong, why did she have to listen to others? Oh, you want to use your status as the first partner to pressure me again? Snake did not budge an inch. In terms of aura, he had been the Beast King for 1,000 years longer than Elvis. How could he lose to a male that he had once scolded as trash? So what if I am? Elvis was no longer the little wolf beast that could not retaliate against Snake. He would not back down in front of anyone when it came to protecting Gu Mingming and not letting her suffer. The authority of the first partner cannot be questioned. Does that include letting the female be in danger? Snake was not angry, just a simple sentence that stabbed straight into Elvis's heart. Today he was the only one here. He should be protecting Xiaoming with all his might. However, Harold had kidnapped Xiaoming right under his nose. Clenching his fists, Elvis said coldly, "It's my fault for not protecting Xiaoming well. What do you want? Come at me directly, don't make things difficult for Xiaoming." Snake laughed softly and said, "Come for you? Alright, let's see how much raging flames you just received today. Let's see how long it will take for me to wipe this gang off the face of the earth." Elvis did not mind at all and said, "I'll be happy to keep you company." Gu Mingming rubbed her temples and said, "Alright, the two of you have not fought for almost 800 years. Is there a need to make such a big fuss over such a small matter today?" Snake frowned and looked at Gu Mingming asking, "Are you blaming me for making a mountain out of a molehill?" Chapter 1680. Snake straightened his body and faced Gu Mingming saying, "Small matter? Then do you know how the three of us came here?" Gu Mingming shook her head and looked at Elvis in confusion. Elvis pursed his lips and sighed deeply saying, "I was handling the matter of receiving the fiery flames in the front hall. Harold's son Kiddo, the man whose arm was broken by me in the first Black Fist fight, sneaked into your room and tried to hurt you. The tip of the knife touched the mark on your chest and summoned Snake over." Gu Mingming was also shocked. She lowered her head and looked again. Indeed, there was a red dot on the head of the snake on her chest. It should be a wound. Snake then continued, "The moment I came over, I saw the dagger stabbing into your heart. Gregory, me, Leah and Elvis, including your own lives, were all hanging by a thread. To you this is just a small matter, isn't it?" Gu Mingming's aura instantly dropped and she said pitifully, "I don't know." "Of course you don't know." Snake laughed coldly and said, "If you knew, you would have summoned your most trusted first partner back to protect you, wouldn't you? In your eyes, only he is your partner and only he is worthy of your trust. If not for him, you would rather be alone in a state of protection than to summon me or Leah to protect you when you meet with trouble. Just how much trust do you have in him? As long as he is in the same building as you, you believe that he can protect you safe and sound. He is clearly not by your side, but you can still fall asleep defenselessly." Elvis obviously could not stand Snake criticizing Gu Mingming like that, but Gu Mingming could hear the fear hidden behind Snake's accusation. Pulling Elvis, who was about to explode, Gu Mingming opened her arms wide at Snake, gesturing for him to hug her. Although Snake was extremely angry, he was also extremely uneasy. So, without another word, he pulled Gu Mingming into his arms and hugged her fiercely. He wished he could bury her in his heart and protect her at all times, so as to quell that fear. "You were asleep and I had to check your breathing every 2 or 3 minutes. I was so afraid that if I came half a second late, the dagger would have pierced your heart. I was so afraid that you weren't asleep but dead. You heartless bad girl, how dare you protect him?" Gu Mingming patted Snake's back gently and comforted him. "I know I was wrong. I won't do such a heartless thing again. Don't worry, I'm fine now, right?" Actually, Snake did not really want to fight with Elvis. He just urgently needed to vent the uneasiness in his heart, otherwise he would go crazy. As for Elvis, perhaps he also needed a battle like this to let his guilt be vented. "Liar." Snake scolded softly. "You're just a little liar. Your words cannot be trusted." Gu Mingming laughed softly. Elvis and Leah had long known that she was a little liar. She thought that at least in front of Snake and Gregory she could maintain her credibility. Now it seemed like she had gone bankrupt again. She looked at Gregory with a faint gaze and thought to herself, "Yeah, this is the only fruit left. At least in Gregory's eyes, my credit limit cannot be overdrawn anymore." Aside from the topic, from now on I, Elvis, have become the leader of the triads in F country. There should be applause here. Chapter 1681. After appeasing Elvis and Snake, Gu Mingming then turned towards Leah, who had been very quiet all along. This fellow was not behaving like a demon, but his style was not right. Leah, who caught Gu Mingming's gaze, then waved his tail and walked seductively to Gu Mingming's side. He half laid on Gu Mingming's knees and said in a flirtatious and coquettish manner, "You finally remembered me?" Her scalp went numb. Elvis and Snake were both violent men. There was basically nothing that could not be solved with a fight. If there was, then they would fight twice. At most, once the door was closed, Gu Mingming would bring them back to the grassland illusion and let them fight to their heart's content. But Leah was different. If he was annoyed, he would definitely torture Gu Mingming's body. Sometimes, Gu Mingming would rather Leah hang her up and give her a good beating, but Leah would not do it. He would only stop after she remembered it for the rest of her life. Leah, Gu Mingming's smile was uglier than crying. She begged for mercy by calling out his mushy nickname, her eyes filled with fawning. Lee's large tail was wagging behind him. The smile on his face was still warm. It did not deepen or lessen because of Gu Mingming's fawning. And Gu Mingming recognized this smile. He only smiled like this when he was angry. The angrier he was, the warmer his smile was. "I promise this is the last time, really. I'm not going to be alone anymore." Sometimes, Gu Mingming would think that if one of the 4 men in her family changed his profession to torture and extort confessions, then Leah would be the best. He did not need any torture at all. He just had to look at you with a smile and you would want to confess. You said the same thing when you jumped off the cliff on the Moda Mountains. Lee's smile did not diminish. His tone was warm and even his eyes were filled with the calmness of the years, but he was secretly bringing up the past. Gu Mingming wrapped her arms around Lee's neck and said coquettishly, "Leah, it's not good for you to always hold grudges in your notebook. It's already thousands of years ago. Can you not mention it anymore?" Leah raised his brows and said with a sorrowful expression, "Back then, when you liked me, you said that my beauty was unparalleled and unforgettable. Now that we've been together for 1,000 years, you despise me for having lingering fears and bringing up the past again?" "I didn't." Gu Mingming could only explain 3 words before she was interrupted by Leah. "You did." Gu Mingming really could not explain herself. She knew that she would get into trouble if she didn't call all her men over when she was in danger. No matter how small the danger was, no matter how insignificant, no matter how daunting it was. Even if she sprained her ankle while walking on the road, she should immediately scratch her ears and cheeks, beat her chest and stomp her feet, and call out the 4 men at home to coax her. It was only reasonable for them to take turns to appease her. Not to mention almost having a dagger stab into his heart. Gu Mingming sighed and looked up at Elvis. "Hubby, aren't you going to say something for me?" Elvis covered his lips and coughed softly. "Xiaoming said she wanted to call you guys over but I stopped her. If you have any grievances then take it out on me." Leah turned to look at Elvis then at Gu Mingming. He lowered his head and said, "I see, then I have nothing more to say." With that, Leah stood up and silently returned to his original spot. The expression on his face was as desolate as one could imagine. It was not a, "I have nothing more to say" expression, but a naked, "I feel bitter in my heart but I won't say it" expression. Aside from the topic. Chapter 1682. Leah. Gu Mingming could not bear to see her man look so aggrieved and sullen. Other than Gregory, the other 3 were all at the level of a beast king. Any one of them would be a king who could do whatever he wanted in the beast world. How could she bear to let such a man suffer? Leah smiled bitterly. Publicly he is the leader. Privately he is the first partner. I have no right to question his decision. Gu Mingming tugged at Lee's hand and said, "It's not like that. Elvis just wanted to use his own abilities to fight for something for me and I chose to believe in him. If it was you today I would definitely support you like this. You guys have always been the ones taking care of me and doing this and that for me. What I can do for you guys is really too limited. Elvis rarely needs my support. How can I bear to reject him? You can understand me, right?" Leah hugged Gu Mingming who was in front of him, then let out a deep breath and said with a hoarse voice, "How many times do I have to say it before you understand? You don't have to do anything at all. Your existence itself is already a blessing to us." Gu Mingming hugged Lee's waist back and asked softly, "Then you're not angry anymore?" "Angry?" Leah replied simply, "But other than being angry, I can't do anything to you. I can only bear with it." "Leah." Gu Mingming called softly. Leah pursed his lips and asked softly, "You said just now that if I want to do something for you, you will support me unconditionally, right?" "Yeah." Gu Mingming replied. Leah smiled and said, "All right, remember this promise first. You little liar, don't go back on your words." With that, Leah kissed Gu Mingming's forehead before letting go of her. Gu Mingming had a premonition that this promise of hers was equivalent to selling herself out. She did not know what kind of tricks Leah would come up with in the future. But now this matter was finally settled. Heaving a sigh of relief, Gu Mingming hung back into Elvis's arms and looked up to ask, "I heard you and Snake talking about something called Furious Flames?" Elvis nodded and replied, "According to them, it is the largest underground gang in F country with the widest area of influence and strong abilities. I just took over this gang and now I am the leader of Furious Flames." Gu Mingming widened her eyes and looked at Elvis in surprise. She had only slept for one night and her husband had turned into a gang leader? Elvis felt a little uncomfortable under Gu Mingming's stare. He cleared his throat and explained, "Xiaoming, I need to have the ability to protect you so that what happened today won't happen again." So, Gu Mingming knew that Elvis had misunderstood her, so she wrapped her arms around his neck and chuckled. "I'm not unhappy, I'm just curious how you managed to control such a gang in such a short time." Elvis smiled. Seeing that Gu Mingming was not angry at him for deciding to take over the fiery flames on his own, Elvis felt much more at ease. He then heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed his entire body. As long as she was not, he was Bi Mingming he. Face. Chapter 1683. By the way, Elvis looked at Leah and said, "He is now the second leader of the Fiery Flames and will be in charge of the internal affairs of the Fiery Flames in the future. Everything that needs to be decided will be decided by him and I will only be in charge of taking action." Gu Mingming burst into laughter. She looked at Elvis and then at Leah, saying, "So, the two of you have applied Saint Nazir's management model to Fiery Flames, and are completely treating Fiery Flames as a tribe?" "More or less." Elvis nodded and said, "But the Fiery Flame seems easier to manage than Saint Nazir. Because there are no troublesome females here." Gu Mingming nodded in agreement. The men in her family always had more ways to deal with males. Leah composed himself and sat back beside Gu Mingming while wagging his tail. He smiled seductively and hooked Gu Mingming's chin, saying, "Mingming, when I was understanding the internal affairs of the Fiery Flames just now, I discovered something very interesting." Gu Mingming tilted her head and looked at Leah, waiting for him to continue. Lee's gaze shifted to Snake and he said, "Although the Fiery Flames is the biggest gang in F country, they are controlled by others in many aspects. Because a gang of the scale of the Fiery Flames is not willing to become the claws of the royal family, and the royal family, who consider themselves to be noble and virtuous, will not be willing to submit to an underground gang, so the two parties are in a stalemate. But now that Elvis and I have taken over this gang, it will be our Gu family's business. His Highness will take care of it, right?" Gu Mingming followed Lee's gaze to look at Snake and burst out laughing. She pinched Leah and said, "So you want Snake to abuse his power and use his official position for personal gain?" Leah shook his head and looked at Gu Mingming. Leah nodded in agreement and said, "Isn't it an unchanging theory that having someone in the government makes things easier? Moreover, even though Elvis and I are in charge of the Fiery Flames, since when have you not been in charge of our family's business? If he were to restrict the Fiery Flames, he would be blocking your path to riches. I don't believe that our Prince Snake would do such a treacherous thing." Gu Mingming sighed deeply. She understood. This was the treaty of treason that she had just signed. She said that if Leia wanted to do something for her, she would definitely support him. It came true so quickly? Snake did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. The reason was simple. If he cooperated with the Fiery Flames, it would mean that the Fiery Flames would not have to submit to the royal family, and the royal family would not have to rely on the Fiery Flames. Both powers would be under Gu Mingming's control. Everything in this world should belong to Gu Mingming, so he felt that there was nothing wrong with it. He said lightly, "You have to keep a low profile when you do things. Don't push Tu Ming to the limelight." "Of course." Leah waved his large tail and, coincidentally, landed in Gu Mingming's arms. Gu Mingming hugged Lee's large tail and stroked it twice. She also felt that it was strange and smiled. How did she carelessly facilitate the collusion between the government and the bandits in F country? It felt like a dream. From today onwards, Xiaoming and all her family members will move in here. Snake, do you have any questions? Elvis asked as the first partner. Snake shook his head, indicating that there was no problem. This was the rule of the beast world. Females should stay in the territory of their first partner. Chapter 1684. If it was said that Gu Mingming could not understand the concept of taking over the Fiery Flames in the small room, then when the four men from the Gu family accompanied Gu Mingming out of the room, Gu Mingming deeply understood the meaning of dark shock. The place that Harold lived in was a very typical European castle. Calling it a villa was not enough to describe its grandeur, it was more like the castle that the ancient European nobles lived in. From the architectural style and size, it was even more magnificent than the one in Snake's house. After all, the royal family had their own rules. No matter how rich you were, you could not live in a more luxurious place than the president. So even though Snake's family was like the sun in the sky, they still maintained a low profile on the surface. But Harold was different. The Fiery Flames was originally the king of the Mafia empire, so his residence was extremely luxurious in all aspects. Every detail tried to show off his authority as the godfather of the underworld. But this old godfather, who had commanded the world for decades, had offended someone he should not have and ended up in such a pitiful state. Otherwise, he could have continued being the underground king in this building. Not talking about Harold anymore, Gu Mingming just felt that she could not help but want to lift up her dress and run around in her crystal shoes as she walked in this building, as if she was a European princess. Looking at Gu Mingming's expression, the four men behind her could not help but smile. There was no other reason. If she was happy, it meant that the whole family was happy. If she liked it, it meant that the whole family liked it. Pushing open the main door of the castle, Gu Mingming squinted her eyes and looked up to welcome the sunlight shining on her face. And at the same time, a group of mafia members in black suits and black sunglasses standing at the entrance of the castle lowered their heads and shouted in unison, "Queen!" This shout gave Gu Mingming a shock. The last time there was such a scene was during the first winter sacrifice in Saint Nazaire, when Leah publicly announced that she was the messenger of the beast deity. Although there were not as many people in Saint Nazaire then, but after all, the voices of orcs could not be compared to normal humans, so the effect was not much different from the current one. It had been many years since she was so respected in unison, and Gu Mingming felt a little uncomfortable. Turning back to look at Elvis, he only looked back at her with doting and indulgent eyes, saying, "You will always be on my shoulders, a level higher than me. Be it in the beast world or here." So, even though he was the king of fiery flames, he requested all the members to greet Gu Mingming before him. He would not allow anyone to be more distinguished than Gu Mingming, not even to be on par with her. Even he himself couldn't do it. She must be the most supreme existence in the world. Gu Mingming tiptoed and kissed him on the cheek. "Thank you for satisfying my vanity. I like it very much." Gu Mingming would no longer use the moral standards of the world to demand herself, because she knew that compared to her understanding, her partners preferred her unbridled manner. Vanity, arrogance, unreasonable, these flaws that ordinary men could not tolerate were incomparably precious treasures in the eyes of her man. They took pride in satisfying her vanity, pride, and vexatiousness, and were deeply happy about it. For example, now that Gu Mingming's vanity was satisfied, Elvis felt that everything he did was meaningful and he felt blissful. Out of topic, that's it for today. I just want to say, Chapter 1685. A month passed by in the blink of an eye. Leah had full authority to handle the internal affairs of the Fiery Flames. After displaying his abilities a few times, the Fiery Flames were all in awe of this second leader and no one doubted him anymore. Furthermore, because of Snake's external assistance and cooperation, the Fiery Flames' overall power had increased by leaps and bounds. The entire gang's morale was at its peak, giving off a feeling that they could walk with the wind. So not only did no one want to take revenge for Harold, they instead felt that Elvis and Lee's appearance was a godsend for the Fiery Flames, while Harold was a sinner who had hindered the Fiery Flames' development. Snake had been quite busy recently in order to establish a relationship between the royal family and the Fiery Flames. But luckily he could see Gu Mingming's happy and carefree smile every night when he returned to the castle to have dinner with Gu Mingming. So he felt that his hard work was worth it. After living in the beast world for so many years, Gu Mingming had some attachment to her territory. So even though Snake's original residence was good and no one dared to disturb Gu Mingming and Snake, she still felt that it was not comfortable to live under someone else's roof. But the castle that Elvis had snatched over was different. This was truly her family's territory, so Gu Mingming felt more at ease staying here. Quentin's injuries are almost healed. Cole had arranged for him to accompany Nina and their child to M Country for treatment yesterday. They have the most advanced technology there and the kidney source is already prepared. Leah whispered into Gu Mingming's ear. Gu Mingming nodded before walking into the boxing dojo. She was not afraid to see Nina or Quentin. It was just that the karma between them in the beast world was complicated and could not be cut off. It was not a big deal if they did not remember her, but Gu Mingming would feel troubled. After all, the men in her family could not tolerate others bullying her. Don't say that you had your own reasons for being schemed against by Leah. If you can't win against Leah, then you are stupid. If you have the ability, then scheme back. So seeing Quentin one more time, the danger level for Quentin and his wife would increase. Who knew who would be the first to lose control and kill him? Therefore, after she had given him all the compensation she could, it would be best for both of them to not see each other again. Turning to look at Elvis, Gu Mingming said, "You are now the leader of the Fiery Flames and your identity is already sensitive, so don't fight again after this round, understand?" Elvis smiled and nodded. "I always listen to Xiao Meng." After getting a satisfactory answer, Gu Mingming did not nag anymore. The VIP hall on the second floor was already prepared. Cole stood at the entrance of the VIP hall and welcomed them in a gentlemanly manner. He said with a smile, "I haven't seen you for a month and you've turned from a boxer I discovered to my partner. Seems like my foresight is really good. You're not just a fish in a pond after all." Elvis ignored Cole. After he took over Fiery Flames, he already knew that Cole and Fiery Flames had a lot of business dealings. For Fiery Flames to be able to achieve what it was today in F country, Cole must have been the mastermind behind the scenes. He cooperated with Raging Flames under his own name, but he held more authority. Herald of the Fiery Flames was just like the leader of the stray beasts in the past, Peter. He seemed to have great power and was extremely awe-inspiring, but in the end he was just a puppet in Cole's hands. Aside from the topic, it had been a long time since she heard this sentence from Elvis. "I always listen to Xiao Meng." Chapter 1686. Elvis could not be bothered to respond to Cole and just gave Leah a look. Leah walked forward with a smile and said, "Today we are here to fulfill our promise. Let's not talk about other things for now." "All right." Cole smiled faintly at Lee's long and narrow eyes. He also did not know why. Gu Mingming clearly had 4 men by her side. Her fiancé in name was Snake, while Elvis was obviously the closest to Gu Mingming, but he just had to have the most acute hostility towards this Leah. As long as he met Leah, he would subconsciously raise his guard, as if the person in front of him was not to be underestimated. Gu Mingming did not usually care about the internal affairs of the tribe and would not interfere with the internal affairs of the gang. It was just that the frequency of meeting acquaintances was higher recently. To prevent the previous incident from happening again, Gu Mingming had no choice but to ask in advance, "Who is my opponent today? Can you show me his information in advance?" Cole was not surprised by Gu Mingming's request at all. Ever since she stopped Elvis from strangling Quentin previously, he already knew that she would definitely pay attention to her opponent in this competition. So he handed Gu Mingming the opponent's information form that he had prepared in advance. He did not say anything and just stared at her with a smile. Gu Mingming completely ignored the expression in Cole's eyes. She only took a glance at the form and held her forehead while sighing, "So the world is really small." Elvis glanced at the form and shook his head helplessly. He smiled bitterly and said, "After all, he went to the platform of the deity's punishment on your behalf. I will be merciful to him." Gu Mingming had left behind many messy debts in the beast world and Barit was one of them. From the first day she came to the beast world, she got to know Barit and implicated him countless times. If it could be said that it was an unintentional mistake due to not understanding the rules of the beast world, then later on, she was pretending to be ignorant. Because Barit had never really confessed to her, she did not have the chance to reject him properly. This dragged on until she stepped down from her position as the messenger of the beast deity and became a beast deity. Standing in the clouds, she saw with her own eyes how Barit defended Saint Nazir to the death for a promise. She also saw with her own eyes how he grew old alone for the rest of his life. The debt of love was the hardest to repay. Leah placed an arm on Elvis's shoulder and glanced at the form. He chuckled and said, "Io, another familiar face. To be honest, I was still on guard against him in the beginning. After all, Mingming was especially caring towards him, hugging and kissing him. I even thought that he would be the 3rd male in our family after me. Unfortunately, he only has a heart full of infatuation, but does not know how to show it in front of Mingming. He is a fool who only knows how to silently contribute. Hugging, kissing." These few words triggered Snake's nerves. He could not help but take a step forward to glance at the form and understood. Gu Mingming smiled bitterly and helplessly. "How many times have I said it? That's because he couldn't swallow at the time, and I had to feed him water with my mouth to save him. And at that time, I didn't know that the barrier between men and women in the beast world was even worse than the Qing dynasty. Let's not talk about this anymore." Chapter 1687. When Leah said that, Gu Mingming also turned to look at Cole as if waiting for his reply. Cole maintained his gentlemanly smile and said, "He should be here for the Wolf King." Gu Mingming then turned to look at Elvis. Elvis thought for a moment and said, "Probably out of habit." After all, Barit had been following Elvis since the establishment of Saint Nazir. Putting aside Gu Mingming's matter, Barit still had a high degree of acknowledgement towards Elvis as a leader. Gu Mingming nodded and said, "All right, then act according to the situation later and show mercy." "All right." Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's forehead before turning to head down to the resting room to prepare. After the previous incident where Elvis tortured Quentin, the audience was even crazier than before. The moment Elvis appeared, the deafening cheers sounded as if they wanted to tear the roof off. Gu Mingming stood by the window and looked down at the arena with mixed feelings. Because when Barit appeared, even Gu Mingming, who was on the second floor, could deeply feel the gazes and cheers from the audience. It was not support and encouragement, but a kind of excitement, as if they were anticipating him to become a bloody corpse in Elvis's hands in a while. Everyone was looking at him with the cruelest and most expectant gaze, as if the more miserable he was, the more excited they would be. This feeling was very uncomfortable. But Barit did not seem to feel the audience's excitement at all as he suddenly looked up at the one-way glass on the second floor. He clearly could not see anything, but he felt his heart contract, as if there was something he desperately desired behind that glass. Gu Mingming instinctively took a step back. Even though she clearly knew that Barit could not really see her, the desire and persistence in his eyes still made Gu Mingming's heart tighten. In the beast world, she had already delayed his entire life. To Barit, not seeing each other for the rest of his life would be the real mercy. Snake stood behind Gu Mingming, using his chest to catch her steadily. If there was anyone who could best understand Gu Mingming's feelings, it would probably be him, who had shared her memories. Some people and some things can't be avoided. Snakel said softly as he held Gu Mingming's little hand with his large hand and kissed it. His stubbornness led him to you. If you don't meet him, his life will be in vain. Compared to me, he's not greedy. He just wants to look at you a few more times. Gu Mingming turned back to look at Snake, her eyes filled with suspicion. Snake had always been the most narrow-minded. The selfishness and possessiveness of a snake were fully displayed in him. Elvis and Leah had become Gu Mingming's partners before him, so he could not do anything about it. Gregory had protected him for 1,000 years, so he owed him a debt of gratitude and allowed him to join Gu Mingming's family. Other than that, he did not allow anyone to get close to Gu Mingming regardless of gender. Why did he suddenly change today? Before Gu Mingming could finish her question, Snake smirked and continued, "As long as he has the ability to break through the 4 of our defenses, we'll let him see what he wants." Gu Mingming chuckled and shook her head. She thought to herself, Snake is indeed Snake. There is no such thing as a sudden change in style. Chapter 1688. However, something unexpected happened once again. Elvis stood at the same spot and did not even move an inch. With just a sudden glare, Barit fell to the ground with a thud and could not get up. The audience looked at each other but no one could say a word. They had spent so much money just to watch a boxing match where no one even moved a finger? What happened to the promised bloody violence? Wasn't breaking one's arm the lowest standard? Cries of refunds rose one after another in the arena and the audience's dissatisfaction rose to the top. Gu Mingming was also extremely astonished by this. She did not understand what was going on. On the other hand, Leah laughed softly and told Cole, "Can I trouble you to switch off the lights and surveillance cameras in the arena for 5 seconds? Cole did not ask for the reason and just instructed through the walkie-talkie. In the next moment, Leah pushed open the windows on the second floor and the arena fell into absolute darkness at the same time. A gust of wind blew in from the windows and following the sound of Leah closing the windows, the lights were switched on again. Elvis, who was originally standing downstairs, was already standing in front of Gu Mingming. As for the spectators who were clamoring for a refund, at that moment, the area below the boxing arena was like a huge drunken scene, with everyone sprawled on the ground. And what attracted Gu Mingming's attention was the leopard in Elvis's hands. Gu Mingming could not believe her own eyes. She had just felt the Beast King's coercion released by Elvis. As she had once been a beast deity, she was immune to such coercion and did not faint like the people downstairs. But why did Barit reveal his true form? This was the modern world and not the beast world. Barit he is the real Barit. Elvis casually threw Barit to Gregory, who had also revealed his true form due to the Beast King's coercion. He said, "We'll talk about the details when we get back." Gu Mingming understood that Elvis was avoiding Cole. Gu Mingming also turned back to look at Cole. She just frowned and did not say a word. Elvis carried Gu Mingming, Leah carried Barit and Snake carried Gregory. The group left the arena through the employees' passageway and returned to the villa. Barit woke up in the evening. Without anyone guiding him, he easily found Gu Mingming in the back garden based on her scent. Gu Mingming turned around and met Barit's eyes. There was no need for any other proof, the way he looked at her was the best evidence. He was the real Barit from the beast world. "Why are you here?" Gu Mingming asked the question in her heart. Barit pursed his lips. Even though he knew he did not have the right to look at Gu Mingming like that, he could not shift his gaze away. He just replied in a hoarse voice, "Because I returned to the embrace of the beast deity after I died. I begged him to let me return to your side and continue protecting you." Vaguely. "I think I saw Oriton. Then when I opened my eyes I was already here." Gu Mingming facepalmed. She understood. Back then, in order to choose a suitable next messenger of the beast deity, she wrote a novel about the beast world and published it on the internet. And the reader who was finally chosen to be the next messenger of the beast deity saw all of Barit's silent contributions and was extremely touched. In addition to Oriton and Barit's revolutionary friendship. Chapter 1689. Then what plans do you have from now on? Gu Mingming sighed and asked softly. Barit smiled and said, "Join the fiery flames and follow Elvis to protect you. I don't want much, just the same as before." Gu Mingming remained silent for a long while before finally nodding her head. It was not that she did not want to persuade Barit to let go, but how many times did she persuade him in the beast world? Did he even hear a single sentence? Back then he did not listen to her advice and chased after her after experiencing life and death. How could he give up now? Barit was also very clear about his position. No matter how much he yearned for it, he would not take another step towards Gu Mingming. Because he knew that as long as he took that small step, the four males around her and even Gu Mingming herself would push him further away. The closest he could get to her was here. Barit turned around to report to Leah while Gu Mingming huddled in Elvis's arms and sighed faintly, saying, "Do you think that my successor as the messenger of the beast deity will throw everyone in the beast world over to me?" "It's hard to say." Elvis said, "That little female is even more mischievous than you." Gu Mingming facepalmed. Perhaps this was called following the example of one's superiors? In the past, she used Wang Xiaoxin's name to swindle people everywhere, while her successor used her to run amok everywhere. Like author, like reader. Shaking her head, she said, "Forget it, let's not think about these first. If we really meet, we'll talk about it." Elvis kissed the top of Gu Mingming's head deeply, then said with a faint gaze, "Xiaoming, I have something to tell you." Gu Mingming replied with a single room and looked up at Elvis. Elvis pursed his lips and said, "I have a present for you." Gu Mingming's lips curved and her eyes curved into a smile. She opened her palms and said, "What is it?" Elvis held her little hand and pressed it down, saying, "I'll give it to you tonight." Gu Mingming blushed and lowered her head on Elvis's chest, saying, "Annoying." Elvis was a little confused from being hung down, until he saw the flirtatious look in her eyes and brows. He then understood that she had misunderstood his intentions. He could not help but rub her little head and said, "If you want it, I will satisfy you later. But that's not the present I'm giving you today." Who wants it?" Gu Mingming immediately retorted, but it was a pity that she did not have any imposing manner. Elvis wrapped his arms around Gu Mingming's waist and pressed his chin against her ear. "I want it." Gu Mingming shut her mouth. She felt that Elvis's "it's all right, I'll take the blame for you" tone made her even more obvious. "What gift is it? So mysterious?" Gu Mingming mumbled. But Elvis only smiled and did not reply. That night, one luxury car after another drove into the castle in an orderly manner. One by one could tell that they were extremely important. Big shots appeared in the parlor of the castle. Clusters of white roses decorated the place like a fairy tale world. The bright pearl shone as if it was daytime. Those who were usually filled with murderous intent were also exchanging toasts with each other. While exchanging toasts and toasts, there was a hint of joy on their faces, making the atmosphere rather harmonious. And when Gu Mingming appeared wearing an elegant evening gown under Elvis's lead, she naturally attracted everyone's attention. Chapter 1690. If it was said that Gu Mingming was still clueless in the afternoon, then when the most famous stylist in F country appeared in front of her and dressed her up without any hesitation, while the 4 men in her family were all dressed in suits and smiling at her, how could she not guess? Snake, Leah and Gregory were all dressed in black suits, while only Elvis was dressed in a white custom-made suit. Together with his extreme dark aura, it formed the strongest contrast, attracting everyone's attention. So, Elvis was the male lead today, while the other 3 were willing to hide their brilliance to serve as his foil. Actually, why did they have to do that? They were an old married couple and they already had 4 children. What was the point of talking about such empty formalities? But when Gu Mingming's hand was held by Elvis, like a princess being carefully protected in his palms, he held her hand and walked the red carpet, leading her step by step to the most dazzling place, to tell the whole world that this woman was his, Elvis's, most precious treasure. That kind of touching and happiness would really make one feel a surge of warmth from the bottom of one's heart, spreading throughout one's entire body, nourishing the love that had settled down for countless days but had its edges smoothed out, allowing the spring breeze to grow new branches, telling her, "Look, your love has not been worn down by the trivial life, it will still blossom into a flower that will surprise you." The exquisite 3-tiered cake and the towering champagne tower, the live violin player and the fragrant white roses that represented pure love. All of this seemed like a scene from a fairy tale. Oh right, there was also the prince that was indispensable in fairy tales, holding her hand at this moment. Elvis brought Gu Mingming to the front of a display stand, then picked up 2 champagne glasses and clinked them lightly. The crisp sound made everyone at the scene quiet down in unison, and they all looked at Elvis attentively. Elvis placed the glasses down, then pulled open the curtain of the display stand. There were 3 combs placed there, all of which Gu Mingming recognized. She shifted her gaze away from the combs, back to Elvis's face as if waiting for him to speak. Elvis took a deep breath, it was obvious that he was still nervous. He pinched Gu Mingming's little hand then slowly opened his mouth. "Xiaoming, I don't know where the end of eternity is, but I know I can't live without you. You are the reason I overcome everything and the reason I must live. You are my most precious one, a treasure that I will never allow to be harmed." There was an ancient legend in Z country. It said that if one of the husband and wife died first, then as long as the wife's wooden comb was split into 2 and carried each of them, they would be able to meet again in the next life. That's why I've prepared 4 combs for you. This way you'll never lose us. You won't have to be afraid of the yellow springs either. We'll always find you and return to your side. Gu Mingming was actually very touched. After all, Elvis was not someone who was good with words. Gu Mingming was already surprised that he could say such romantic words. But, these are clearly 3 combs. Chapter 1691. What? Gu Mingming's expression changed. Elvis held Gu Mingming's hand and said, "Don't be angry, let me finish." Gu Mingming bit her lower lip and the happiness on her face disappeared. Elvis smiled bitterly. He knew that Xiaoming would be angry if he hurt her, but, "I'm afraid that the so-called forever will suddenly come to an end. I'm afraid that I will lose you when I'm unprepared. I'm afraid that I won't be able to find you." So I took out the second rib from my left chest and personally ground it into a bone comb. It's the bone closest to my heart. It knows best that every beat of my heart is because of you. So, if the end of forever suddenly comes, and I don't even have time to break the wooden comb and hold half of it with you, then this bone will at least guide me to find you in this desolate world. Xiaoming, my heart will not stop beating without this bone protecting it. But if I can't find you, there's no meaning for my heart to beat anymore. So don't be angry at me. Be good and keep it by your side. Let me know that I won't lose you. Alright? Gu Mingming pursed her lips. She really didn't like it when they used this method of hurting themselves to prove their love for her. Leah always understood Gu Mingming the best. He took a step forward and said, "Don't forget the regenerative ability of a beast king. Even coal can grow a new hand and tail. A bone is nothing to Elvis." Gu Mingming glared daggers at him. Leah immediately surrendered and said, "Don't worry, I promise. The men in our family won't be so uncreative and follow Elvis's method. Just this once, no one will take anything from their body and give it to you, okay?" Gu Mingming finally calmed down. She placed her hand on Elvis's left chest and asked, "Does it still hurt?" Elvis shook his head and said, "As long as you're around, I don't feel any pain." In the end, Gu Mingming still took over the bone comb from Elvis's hands. She could only feel the warmth from the comb burning her palms in pain. She whispered into Elvis's ear, "You have to promise me that you won't do such things again." "All right." Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's earlobe gently and promised, "I'll always listen to Xiao Meng." Gu Mingming then nodded her head in satisfaction, letting him off this time. After all, there were so many people watching. This was the first time Elvis, the underground upstart, had appeared in public, so she had to save some face for him. Furthermore, Elvis had spent so much effort to organize a banquet for her, she did not want to let him return in disappointment. Seeing that Gu Mingming's expression had softened a little, Elvis looked at Leah with gratitude. He then took half a step back and knelt down on one knee. He held Gu Mingming's hand and kissed it, saying, "Xiao Ming, everything in this world is too foreign to me. I'm still not outstanding enough and I'm not compatible with you, but I'm willing to use everything I have to support a world for you, so that you can live a carefree life where I am. For you, I will stand at the peak of the world and make you the most honorable person in the world." Snake was right about one thing. How can my woman be wronged? The proposal that has been delayed for 1,000 years is the ceremony I owe you. Chapter 1692. Gu Mingming stretched out her left hand and lifted her ring finger. Elvis smiled as he took out the ring from the box and wore it on her slender finger. Then the corners of his lips curled up uncontrollably. Gu Mingming pulled Elvis up from the ground. Elvis pulled Gu Mingming into his arms and kissed her forehead. He whispered in her ear, "Xiao Ming, I'm sorry for making you wait for so long." Gu Mingming shook her head and chuckled, "No matter if there is a proposal or not, you will always be my first partner and my husband." Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's lips for a long time. Claps and cheers came from the surroundings. Gu Mingming then remembered that there were not only her family members here, there were also some influential guests. Pushing Elvis away lightly, Gu Mingming lowered her head shyly and leaned against his chest obediently. The sound of the cork flying out of the bottle pushed the atmosphere to a small climax. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming with one hand and held the champagne bottle with the other. He started pouring the champagne from the top of the champagne tower. After he finished pouring the champagne, he gave Leah a look and Leah started greeting the guests with a face full of smiles. To Leah, these social interactions were self-taught. There was no other reason other than it was too easy to guess what these people were thinking. Almost all their thoughts were written on their faces. So, as long as Leah was willing, he could converse happily with everyone. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming and walked towards the garden at the back, saying that he had another surprise for Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming looked at Elvis in confusion and asked, "Where else did you remove?" Elvis smiled bitterly and said, "Removing one rib has already made you unhappy, how would I dare to remove anything else?" Even if he really removed it, he did not dare to say it now. Gu Mingming was still skeptical and asked, "Really?" Elvis nodded his head seriously and said, "I promised you that I won't lie to you." Only then did Gu Mingming relax. She started to look forward to the surprise that Elvis had mentioned. Before they reached the garden, Gu Mingming heard the melodious sound of a piano. Raising her brows in confusion, Gu Mingming looked at Elvis with a face full of suspicion. If giving her a piano performance could be considered a surprise, then the one playing the piano should at least be Elvis himself. But he was currently hugging her, so it was impossible for him to play the piano. Facing Gu Mingming's doubtful gaze, Elvis smiled and said, "Believe me, you will definitely like it." When Gu Mingming and Elvis walked to the back garden accompanied by the melodious piano music, there was only a pure white European-style piano. A young man sat in front of the piano looking clean and pure. His slender fingers wandered over the black and white keys of the piano. He was playing and enjoying himself at the same time. The melody flowed smoothly from his fingertips and seemed to revolve around him, turning into a galaxy. The young man sat in the center of the Milky Way, surrounded by stars, dazzling and captivating. However, the moment he opened his eyes, you would suddenly realize that his eyes were the brightest stars in the world. His pupils were as clear as the night sky, containing the entire galaxy of the universe. His faint smile had the power to touch people's hearts. That pure young man had the cleanest look. Just one eye contact made Gu Mingming's heart clench and she could not help but hold her heart with both her hands. "It's so good to see you again." Digression. This round of digression had ended. Then everyone guess who is this young man? Hint. He was someone unrelated to love, but Gu Mingming still held him in high regard. He was also a character that once made the baby's hearts ache. P.S. Chapter 1693. Fei Rui. Gu Mingming could not help but call out in a low voice. She still remembered how Fei Rui had swallowed the poisonous shellfish king and was bleeding from all his orifices. His skin was festering bit by bit as he fell backwards into the depths of the ocean. Inch by inch, he was devoured by the black poisonous fog right before her eyes, until nothing was left of him. Snake and Gregory had also paid a similar huge price for her, but no matter what, Snake and Gregory were her men. According to the rules of the beast world, it was reasonable for them to do anything for her. But Fei Rui was not. He was just an obedient and pure child, so kind that no one could bear to lie to him. That pair of clear eyes was like the brightest star in the galaxy. The moment he opened his eyes, he brought you to experience the brilliance of the entire galaxy. And such a child had died so tragically. She did not even have a chance to make it up to him. That was the thorn in Gu Mingming's heart that she could not pull out for a long time. Even after 1,000 years, the moment she saw Fei Rui, her heart shrank and her eyes turned red without any precaution. Fei Rui's slender fingers played the last note on the piano. He then stood up elegantly and bowed to Gu Mingming like a gentleman. Gu Mingming could not control herself. She could not suppress the excitement in her heart and her entire body stiffened strangely. When she walked step by step to Fei Rui, she was already sobbing uncontrollably. There were no words that could express her joy and gratitude at this moment. She could only hug Fei Rui tightly and refuse to let go no matter what. Fei Rui seemed to be shocked by Gu Mingming's actions. After all, he was different from Barit. He was indeed Fei Rui, but not a little mermaid with deep-sea memories. But Gu Mingming was also different from other lascivious men. Her hug did not have any hint of disrespect or teasing. Instead, it was more like an old mother looking forward to the return of her son who had gone to join the army after the war. This made Fei Rui at a loss. He wanted to push Gu Mingming away but felt that she was crying too pitifully. He could not bear to see her cry so heartbroken and heart-wrenching. But if he did not push her away, not far away, the new leader of Furious Flames stood with a face so cold that the temperature of the entire castle was about to drop below zero. Fei Rui even had the misconception that if Gu Mingming did not let go, that person would pounce on him and bite him. Yes, he didn't pull out his gun and turn him into a sieve. Instead, he pounced on him and tore him apart bit by bit. Fei Rui sucked in a breath of cold air and his body instinctively shrank back, attracting Gu Mingming's attention. What happened to you? Are you feeling unwell? Gu Mingming's face was covered in tear stains. Honestly speaking, her current appearance could not be considered beautiful at all. She was covered in snot and tears and looked as pathetic as she could be. But it was this face that revealed sincerity and concern that warmed Fei Rui's heart. He pushed Gu Mingming away slightly and pulled up his sleeves. Gu Mingming stared at the broken skin on his arm in shock. It was obvious that blood was seeping out, which meant that the wound was freshly made. He was fine when he was playing the piano just now. How did this happen? Could it be, did I hug you too tightly and hurt you? Gu Mingming asked with self-blame and worry. Aside from the topic, originally I had planned to publish Lee's side story after I finished writing it. But the editor said that the figures for Elvis's side story were not bad during this period of time. He asked me not to stop and continue publishing Lee's side story. This was a little rushed because I had not finished writing this side story yet. I was a little worried that I would not be able to finish his story. So Su would slow down the speed of updating. Lee's side story would be updated at 2 chapters a day. I hope my babies can understand. P.S. Chapter 1694. Fei Rui nodded, but shook his head before Gu Mingming could apologize. He patted Gu Mingming's shoulder lightly and smiled. There were no words, but Gu Mingming seemed to understand that he was saying, "It's all right, don't worry." This pitiful child, always looking like he couldn't bear to blame anyone. When Leah blocked the well with a huge rock and almost killed him with his beasts, he never complained about Leah in front of Gu Mingming. He was even willing to apologize to Leah first, to prevent Gu Mingming from arguing with Leah because of him. He never knew that his understanding and consideration were what made people's hearts ache more. Gu Mingming wiped her tears as she shouted, "Leah, Leah." The Beast King's hearing was extremely good, and her partner was especially sensitive to her voice. So in just 2 breaths, Leah, who was standing in the hall socializing with the crowd, had already wrapped his arms around Gu Mingming's waist flirtatiously. He rested his chin on Gu Mingming's shoulder and wiped away the tears on Gu Mingming's face with his slender fingers. He pursed his lips and whispered into her ear, "We've only been apart for 10 minutes and you're already crying because you missed me?" Gu Mingming was not in the mood to flirt with him. She sniffled and suppressed her sobs, saying, "Help me look after Fei Rui, this child." Leah held Gu Mingming's shoulders with both hands and turned her around to face him. He bent down slightly to accommodate her height and looked into her eyes, saying, "How can I be in the mood to treat others when you're crying like this? It's not like you don't know that under any circumstances, I will always take care of you first." Gu Mingming immediately wiped away the tears on her face rudely, then looked at Leah with pleading eyes, saying, "I'm fine, I'm really fine. Help me look after Fei Rui." Leah kissed Gu Mingming's eyes lightly, then said, all right, when have I ever rejected your requests? Don't cry, I will cure him. Gu Mingming nodded, then allowed Leah to pass her into Elvis's arms. Elvis took Gu Mingming's arms and gently squeezed her little hand to comfort her. Leah rolled his eyes at Elvis and said, "When Snake proposed, he used friends and balloons to make Mingming so happy. Look at you, first you used a bone comb to make her angry and now you used a Fei Rui to make her cry. Sai, if I were to switch sides with Snake one day, your position as the first partner would be in jeopardy." Elvis shook his head helplessly with a bitter smile. What could he do? He was also in despair. He had guessed that Xiaoming might be angry about the bone comb, but in order to be with him forever, he was willing to take the risk of making her angry. As for Fei Rui, it was because he knew that Xiaoming would be angry about the bone comb, so he left this surprise here to make up for his mistake. How could he have known that he would be so surprised that Xiaoming would cry? Alas, what a great sorrow. Leah didn't waste too much time on Elvis. After all, Fei Rui was also a suspected love rival of Gu Mingming's when she was in the beast world. When I'm in a good mood, I'll take him in as my male. How could he let Gu Mingming focus her emotions on him for a long time? Although the two of them didn't develop anything in the beast world, Fei Rui's death was so dramatic. Who knew if Gu Mingming would develop some other emotions out of heartache? Aside from the topic. Even after they died, they would beg to return to your side just to see you one more time. But you never gave him any hope. You first took in Snake, then Gregory, and now you want to use Fei Rui to stab him in the heart? Gu Mingming was stunned by Li's scolding and only reacted after a long while. She hurriedly shook her head and said, I don't have that kind of feeling towards Fei Rui. In my eyes, Fei Rui is the same as the Ku brothers. I am not a pervert, I am not a pedophile. Chapter 1696. Gu Mingming's sorrowful feelings from seeing Gregory were all messed up by Li's warning. Now that she had a phone, maybe she should really send out a message for help. Hubby tend to get jealous and think that I'm having an affair with every male? It's quite urgent, I'm waiting online. After thinking for a while, she gave up. Just the word hubby would probably cause the netizens' imagination to run wild and come up with all sorts of ideas. But luckily she did not have any strange thoughts towards Fei Rui, and Fei Rui obviously did not have those thoughts towards her either. So this matter did not cause much of a stir and was soon forgotten. After Leah did a comprehensive checkup on Fei Rui, he concluded that Fei Rui had a rare skin disease. Currently, there were very few people in the world who had this disease, so there was no specific name for it. His skin was thinner and weaker than normal people and would break with just a slight touch. So the clothes he usually wore had to be especially soft, and he had to avoid physical contact with others. Apart from that, Fei Rui's vocal cords were damaged and he could not speak. So even though he had a good sense of music, he could only play the piano and not sing. He could not make friends like normal people, fall in love, and could not even attend a special school like other deaf and mute people to integrate into a group with the same attributes as him. He could only live alone. The piano became his only friend. His talent and hard work allowed him to have outstanding skills in the piano field. Unfortunately, he could not display his talent in front of others like other pianists, and could only play silently for himself in the piano room. If Elvis had not accidentally discovered him and brought Gu Mingming along to become his first audience, he would probably spend the rest of his life alone in that piano room, with the black and white keys as his companions for the rest of his life. Gu Mingming sighed. Even though Leah did not say it, what could Gu Mingming not understand? His vocal cords were damaged because there was a poisonous shellfish king stuck in his throat. His skin was weak because his skin had been corroded by the poisonous fog. I don't like it when you sigh for other males, so I will cure him. You don't have to worry about it. Leah held Gu Mingming's little face and kissed it, saying, but the treatment process for this disease is very strict on the environment, so he cannot stay in the ancient castle. We have to arrange for him to receive treatment in a sterile ward. Gu Mingming nodded to show that she had no objections. She did not even dare to raise the question of whether she could visit him. No choice. Leah was even more jealous than Elvis. If she didn't avoid it and allowed Leah to believe that she had some unspeakable feelings for Fei Rue, she had no doubt that Fei Rue would most likely die in a medical accident during a dermatological treatment. Leah was quite satisfied with Gu Mingming's attitude. Hence, Fei Rue was taken away by Li's men on the same day. He did not know where he was going or when he would be back, and he did not dare to ask. 3 months passed quietly like this. Gu Mingming had unknowingly become the most respectable woman in this world. The people of the surface world called her princess. The people of the lower world called her queen. She was getting redder and redder, but she was getting more and more reluctant to go out. Luckily, the ancient castle that Elvis had snatched was big enough for her to kill time by walking around the house twice a day. Until one day, when a woman with disheveled hair, dirty body, and ragged clothes appeared in front of her in a deranged manner, breaking the original peace. Out of topic, come on, guess who this woman is? Chapter 1697. Slut. You slut. That deranged woman raised her hand and pointed shakily at Gu Mingming, shouting hysterically, "It's all your fault, it's all your fault. I'll strangle you to death." Gu Mingming was taken aback at first, but she quickly retreated. Although Snake no longer had the powers of a beast king, his body still retained its memories of battles. She did not have the strength to slap Wabiai away like before, nor did she have the agility to avoid the orc's attacks, but her reflexes were still sufficient to deal with an ordinary woman covered in wounds. And Gu Mingming had just dodged to the side when she felt a tightness around her waist. She was lifted up and protected by a chest. And that deranged woman was sent flying by Leah with a kick. Immediately after, bodyguards rushed up and pinned the woman to the ground, waiting for Li's orders with their heads raised. Li's face darkened as he said coldly in fluent F language, "Bring her back to the dungeon and watch carefully. If something like this happens again, I'll lock all of you up in the dungeon too." The bodyguards had personally witnessed how Leah dealt with the 3 people in the dungeon these few days, so they were fully aware of this man's ruthlessness. They were people who were used to living on the edge of a knife's edge and had seen all sorts of situations. Leah had completely refreshed their understanding of the word terror. His viciousness was far from the level of breaking off an arm or a leg. The saying, "Killing someone is just a matter of nodding your head to the ground," was considered a gracious punishment to him. So, when Leah said that no matter how warm his smile was, the bodyguards all felt a chill down their spines. They did not dare to belittle him and immediately nodded in agreement, before bringing the deranged woman away. After the outsiders left, Gu Mingming then asked, "That woman, what happened?" "It's just a triad matter, don't worry about it." Leah answered casually, as if it was just a small matter that was not worth mentioning. Usually, Gu Mingming was not willing to get involved in triad matters, because triads were different from tribes. They were not simply independent political entities, and only needed to close their doors and settle their own family matters. The relationship between the gangs was complicated, and the conflict of interest was much deeper than that between one tribe and another. Only Li's nimble mind could handle everything in an orderly manner and avoid many unnecessary conflicts and fights. In addition, the relationship between him and the royal family required him to know when to advance and when to retreat. Sometimes, a wrong word or even a wrong piece of clothing could cause a huge uproar. So Gu Mingming did not like to interfere with the affairs of the tribe. She did not want to cause more trouble for her own males. But this time was an exception. This was the first time Gu Mingming asked after Leah mentioned the gang's internal affairs. Why would the fiery flames need to settle with a woman? Didn't the underworld also have its own principles and rules? At the very least, it's don't bring disaster to your wife and children. Leah took a deep breath and looked at Gu Mingming. He shook his head and sighed, "Mingming, I shouldn't have promised to never lie to you or hide anything from you back then." Gu Mingming raised her brows and tilted her head to look at Leah. Would Leah need to lie to her or deliberately hide things from her if it was just a matter within the gang? How could it be? So, that woman, out of topic. Chapter 1698. Leah looked into Gu Mingming's eyes and finally gave up. "I can tell you, but you have to promise not to be angry or abandon me because of this." Upon hearing that, Gu Mingming looked helpless and amused. How many years had it been since Leah mentioned the word, abandon? Why did it suddenly pop out today? What? She's your lover? You are afraid that I will find out, so you imprisoned her? Leah frowned and glared at Gu Mingming. He gritted his teeth and said, "You dare to doubt my loyalty? Gu Mingming instantly felt her waist and legs turn to jelly. She immediately surrendered like a coward and said, I don't dare to, I just want to express that unless you have an affair, I will not abandon you. If that's more like it. Leah was also not sure if Gu Mingming would be angry if she heard what he said later. So even though he was in the right now, he did not dare to make things difficult for Gu Mingming. So he just brushed it off and did not pursue the matter further. Clearing his throat, Leah tightened his grip on Gu Mingming's little hand. He then said in a low voice, I found a way to treat Fei Rui. Gu Mingming nodded in agreement. That's a good thing, but does it have anything to do with that woman? Aren't you going to ask me how to treat Fei Rui first? Oh, then how are you going to treat Fei Rui? Leah pursed his lips and then looked at Gu Mingming from the corner of his eye. He said softly, change the skin. Change? Gu Mingming's mind exploded. She then frowned and said, you want to give that woman's skin to Fei Rui? Leah shook his head. Gu Mingming was about to heave a sigh of relief when she heard Leah say calmly and slowly, she is too old and her skin quality is not good. So I did not use her skin. Instead, I used her daughter's skin. Gu Mingming looked at Leah in shock. She was stunned for a moment before asking, how much did you use? All of it. Leah clearly felt Gu Mingming's body stiffen the moment he said this. Leah sighed faintly and said, I knew you would be angry. You hate it the most when I touch other females, you will definitely think that it's dirty. Although I wore gloves the whole time, you still can't accept it, right? It's alright, once I'm done with my revenge, I'll let Elvis, the first partner, carry out the execution and chop off these dirty hands of mine. Gu Mingming caught the keyword in Li's words, revenge? How long had Leah been in the modern world? Moreover, he spent most of his time with Gu Mingming, who would have the chance to form a grudge with him. Moreover, Li's EQ was actually very high. Unless it was related to Gu Mingming, it was very difficult for others to anger him, much less escalate it to the level of hatred. A situation that could make Leah scheme so much that he would rather sacrifice both his hands for revenge? I know her? Gu Mingming narrowed her eyes and asked directly. Leah nodded his head and replied unwillingly, if the past that Snake heard about after he came to this world is all true, then you should know her. Her past, after Snake came to this world? Gu Mingming thought about Li's words that sounded like a tongue twister. She thought about it a few times before she understood. That was something that happened before she met Snake? She met Snake when she was in her first year of university, so this woman was someone she knew before she entered university? Digression. Chapter 1699. Things that happened before university. Gu Mingming tried hard to recall. Who was it? The same person who bullied her when she was working? The classmate who wrongly accused her of stealing class funds in high school? That could not be. Even someone as calculative as Snakel did not take revenge on those trivial matters. Why would Leah go to such lengths to skin someone's daughter to take revenge? If that was the case, she must have offended her quite severely, right? But why could she not recall it herself? Leah stretched out his long and slender thumb to gently stroke Gu Mingming's tightly furrowed brows. Be good, don't frown. My heart aches. Gu Mingming looked up at Leah in a daze. Then don't make me waste my brain thinking about it. Just tell me, who is that woman? Leah pursed his lips and said a name, Wang Xiyun, the mistress who stole your beast father. Gu Mingming was instantly stunned. Wang Xiyun. Wang Xiyun. How could she have forgotten this name? That woman who destroyed her family and made her an orphan. That woman who destroyed her original life with one kick. How could she have forgotten about her? Ah, that's right. Only such a huge grudge would make Leah want to take action personally. But, how did you know? Gu Mingming asked with a frown. Leah looked at Gu Mingming's expression. Just hearing that name made all the muscles in his body tense up. That pair of eyes that had been calm for 1,000 years, as if nothing could provoke her anymore, was instantly tainted with thin red streaks. Taking a deep breath, Leah said, when Elvis accompanied you to the fantasy realm to meet Wang Xiaoxin, didn't he watch a TV series? It was about your beast father looking for you in university. You were so angry that you hid in the toilet and cried secretly. Then, when Bailan scolded you, she mentioned the grievances you suffered because of that adulterous couple. When Elvis came back and told me, I asked you. Everything you said was true. At that time, I told you that I wanted to come to the modern world and take revenge with my own hands. But you said that the wish that could be exchanged for opening the doors of time and space was to be used to save Qixian. So you didn't agree to it. Now that Leah mentioned it, Gu Mingming recalled that there was indeed such a scene. It was just that too much time had passed, so much so that Gu Mingming herself had forgotten about it. Gu Mingming clenched her fists and weighed the pros and cons in her heart. In the end, she hugged Li's neck and leaned on his shoulder. It's all in the past. I've already let it go. I don't hate anymore. So, there's no need for revenge, no need. Ming, do you still not understand? Li's voice was low and had an undeniable insistence. He said, this is my vengeance, my hatred, I can't let it go. I can't forgive anyone who hurt you, especially them. Ming is so precious to me, how dare they? He actually dared. She despised you, abandoned you, and used harsh words to mock you. That bitch even hit you. I can't forgive, I really can't. I must take revenge for this. I will use the cruelest method in this world to make them pay for what they have done to you in the past. I must. Those few key words were like sharp daggers stabbing into Li's heart. Even if he did not witness the process with his own eyes, just the thought of those words happening to Gu Mingming made him feel that it was intolerable. Aside from the topic. Chapter 1700. Leah, I know your heart aches for me. But to me, these are all things that happened 1,000 years ago. No matter how deep the hatred and unwillingness to accept it, it has all been smoothed over by time. So I really don't hate them anymore. Leah stared at Gu Mingming quietly, and after a while he smiled and said, you, even after experiencing 1,000 years of hardship, you are still as soft-hearted as before. The moment you heard her name, you frowned, your eyes reddened, your fists clenched tightly, and your entire body stiffened. Yet you still say that you forgive her? Gu Mingming shook her head and said, she destroyed my family and snatched what could have been a peaceful and beautiful life from me. I can't forgive her, I will never be able to. But not forgiving doesn't mean I hate her. I don't want her to become the dark side of my life. I don't want a lowly person like her to cause me to fall into a twisted psychological struggle. I also don't want you or the other males in the family to be tainted by her dirty blood. Can you understand me? Leah shook his head and then kissed Gu Mingming's forehead gently and said, I'm sorry, Mingming. I clearly promised to listen to everything you say, but this time, I'm going to disobey you. This is the only thing that I really can't let go of. Gu Mingming sighed softly. She didn't want to be a saint and say that no matter how she hurt her in the past, we must forgive her, change her and help her before living a loving life together. She was once a beast deity, but not a deity who loved everyone. She didn't have a compassionate heart like Buddha, nor was she as open-minded and wise as Jesus. She believed in the cycle of reincarnation and that good and evil would be rewarded accordingly. Repaying evil with good, how to repay good with good. So, she said she didn't hate Wang Suyun not because of Wang Suyun but because of the males in her family. Hating someone was a very, very tiring thing. Especially Leah, there was already a huge darkness in his life that could not be erased. He was entangled by hatred and was unable to break free even after mating with her. After 1,000 years, he finally forgot about his hatred and could bathe under the sunlight like the pure white snow on the mountaintop and no longer have to endure those filthy entanglements. How could she bear to use her past to drag him back into the abyss of hatred? Her heart ached for her own man. How far do you want me to go before you stop? Gu Mingming didn't want to blame Leah for anything. After all, he was like that because his heart ached for her. Leah pursed his lips and answered honestly, if these 3 people die, I will stop. After all, Mingming has already said, one's wife and children should not be implicated. Gu Mingming nodded and did not try to persuade him again. Leah was very flexible in most matters and was especially willing to listen to Gu Mingming, compromising for her without any principles. But in some specific areas he was stubborn, even more difficult to persuade than the other 3 males in the family. Since he had decided to kill her scum of a father and his family of 3, he would definitely kill them. Even if Gu Mingming begged for mercy, it would be useless. He sighed and said, so out of those 3, only that woman is still alive? Leah looked coldly in the direction of the dungeon and his lips curled into a sinister smile. No, all 3 of them are alive. Chapter 1701. Yes, he was skinned. Leah retracted his gaze, and when he looked at Gu Mingming, his malevolence dissipated by a lot. Then he replied proudly, do you still remember Damagua? Gu Mingming thought for a while and nodded. The names in the beast world were 2 European and American. Other than those she was especially familiar with, Gu Mingming really could not remember much. Especially those whom she had only met a few times, she could not remember them all. But Damagua was an exception. Although she had only met him once, his name was sufficiently special, so Gu Mingming could remember him more deeply. Then do you still remember what you said to him when you were scaring him? Leah seemed to have thought of something interesting. The curve of his lips changed slightly into a sweet smile. Gu Mingming thought for a long time and shook her head. She only remembered that it was the first winter before she came to the beast world. Damagua attacked her like a lunatic and even injured many warriors in the Saint Nazir tribe. Elvis and Leah then managed to cure him. Was she trying to scare him? No, right? Leah smiled indulgently and dotingly. His tone was full of gentleness and sweetness as he said, "He damaged your beast skin and you lied to him that the beast skin was hunted by your beast deity for your mother beast. Then, your mother beast gifted you the extremely precious beast skin and wanted him to skin himself to compensate you. He even said that I was good at skinning and could peel off his skin in one piece without dying." Gu Mingming laughed awkwardly and said, "Really? Did that happen?" Leah nodded seriously, then tapped Gu Mingming's little nose in a slightly reproachful manner and said, "You really made things difficult for me at that time. Skinning in the beast world can only use claws. Although they are sharp and used well, they cannot be as precise as modern machines. So at that time I couldn't peel off his entire skin and not let him die. But now I seem to be able to do it." Xia Xiangxi facepalmed. She swore that she really did not expect Leah to remember the nonsense she spouted and persevere until he succeeded. Then what about him? No matter what, Gu Mingming could no longer call him father. Leah thought for a while. Gu Mingming had already seen that bastard and he had confessed to her about her daughter. So it was obvious who the remaining him was. "I felt that the 10 greatest tortures of the Qing dynasty that you told me previously were quite good, so I tried it on him?" Gu Mingming's lips twitched. She really regretted it. She should not have told Leah, such a black-hearted person like him, those things. "So, you used a small blade to dismember him?" "No," Leah replied calmly. "I plan to use the death of 1,000 cuts on that slut. As for the male one, I'm currently executing the first of the 5 punishments of the Zhou dynasty by..." Gu Mingming was momentarily stunned. She did not learn history very well, so she only knew the more famous 10 great punishments of the Qing dynasty. As for the 5 punishments of the Zhou dynasty, she did not know much about them. Leah laughed coldly and said, "I will bring him to you in the afternoon?" Gu Mingming hesitated for a moment before nodding. Leah did not say anything else. He kissed Gu Mingming's little face and carried her back to the castle. No matter how busy the males of the Gu family were, they would always come back on time to accompany Gu Mingming during mealtimes. Aside from the topic. Chapter 1702. Although it was impossible for them to fill their stomachs at the dining table with their appetites, they would not let Gu Mingming eat alone. Especially after Leah heard from somewhere that eating alone would lead to a drop in one's immune system, loss of appetite, indigestion and other complications, the males of the Gu family never missed Gu Mingming's 3 meals a day. So, during lunch, Leah told the other members of the family that Gu Mingming already knew that he had captured her beast father. Only then did Gu Mingming know that it was a group crime and she was the only one who was kept in the dark. Leah understood Gu Mingming too well. As long as there was a slight change in her expression, he would be able to tell 80% of the reason. Wagging his tail, he leaned on Gu Mingming's shoulder in a fawning manner and said, "Mingming, after I came over, I learned a new phrase: the law does not punish the masses. Even if you are angry with me and don't care about me anymore, it can't be that none of the males in the family can make you care about them. As long as there is one that you can't bear to do, then I will have the leeway to beg for mercy. So, I dragged all the males in the family down with me. Tell me, am I not smart?" Gu Mingming slapped Lee's head and did not know whether to laugh or cry. "You still have the cheek to say that? You've led the 3 of them astray with those mean moves of yours." Leah shrugged his shoulders and said innocently, "How can that be? Elvis used to be mean with me, he's not much nicer than me when he's mean. Not to mention Snake, this deity is someone who had shocked the entire beast world for 1,000 years. When he died, little shit accompanied you to the deep sea and the ocean tribes were still talking about him. How cruel, heartless and bloodthirsty he was. Compared to him, I'm just like a child in the presence of an adult. If we're talking about being led astray, probably only Gregory is considered a clean one. He was implicated by me." As Leah said that, he looked up at Gregory. Gregory, who had been silent all this while, opened his mouth and said, "It's not implicated, it's my duty to avenge you. But if it was me, I would probably just catch them high up in the sky, throw them down and order the birds to eat them in the sky." But this is far less satisfying than Li's way of handling things. So, I took the initiative, willingly and wholeheartedly supported Leah. Gu Mingming face-bombed. This method of splitting the food among a group of birds was not any better, really. But she also knew that Grace would say such a thing, nothing more than the relationship of family status. Gregory was only a guardian beast. Since the other 3 men of the Gu family had already reached an agreement, he had no right to object. Gu Mingming waved her hands, gesturing for them to stop. She really had no interest in listening to the Gu family men sharing their experiences in 100 ways to torture people. It was enough to have Leah, the scheming and black-bellied fellow. Was there really no need to gather 4 of them and form a black-bellied alliance to play mahjong? Oh right, after this matter is settled, I need to trouble Elvis with something. Leah smiled and waved his hands in front of Elvis. Mingming is not happy that I touched other females and thinks that my hands are dirty. So after I kill the 3 of them, you, my first partner, will help me chop off my hand. Upon hearing this, the other 3 males' eyes shone with envy. Li's face was also filled with pride, as if he was in the spring breeze. Aside from the topic. Chapter 1703. Gu Mingming's scalp went numb. When did the males in her family start such a perverted mode? Why did it feel like all of them were abnormal? Xiao Meng. Elvis was the first to attack. His blue eyes stared straight at Gu Mingming, as if Gu Mingming was a woman who was about to abandon her family and children. He said, I threw Wang Xiyun into the dungeon with my own hands. Gu Mingming tilted her head and looked at Elvis in confusion. What did he mean? Tu Meng. Snake immediately opened his mouth. Before you guys transmigrated here, I had already come into contact with them. I was so angry that I personally beat them up before throwing them into Zimbabwe. I beat up a family of 3. It was just that my body had not recovered to its normal state at that time, so I did not kill them. Gu Mingming looked at Snake in confusion. She did not open her mouth but seemed to be saying, so? Baby Meng. Gregory interrupted in a low voice. Previously I also kicked her once. Gu Mingming really could not keep up with the rhythm of these 3 men. She blinked and asked, what are you guys trying to say? Elvis and the other 2 pursed their lips and stared straight at Gu Mingming. Seeing that she did not reply after a long while, he could only sigh. You really only care about whether Leah did it cleanly or not. Other than him, you don't care about me or Snake, not to mention a guardian beast like Gregory. Gu Mingming did not understand. What were they even talking about? Previously at the stray beast camp, you had placed my hand in front of Natalie to let her touch in order to appease her. You were even willing to lie to me in the wild, saying that it was because she was my mother beast that you could resist letting her touch me. But now, I told you that I touched Wang Xiyun, why didn't you chop off my claws? Gu Mingming widened her eyes and looked at her 3 males who were begging to be chopped off. She asked in disbelief, so, what you guys mean is that when your hands touched other females, my obsession with cleanliness should act up and I should chop off all of you? The 3 males nodded in unison and looked at the arrogant Leah in unison. Gu Mingming finally understood. No wonder the 4 of them had such a strange expression just now. So this was the crux of the problem. Holding her forehead, Gu Mingming slapped Li's shoulder and said, go ahead and do it. Mingming, Leah looked at Gu Mingming with a love-struck smile and said, rough work like enforcing domestic discipline should be left to the first partner? How can you hit me personally? What if I hurt your little hand? What should I do then? Don't be so reckless in the future, understand? Although Elvis is a beast king, I am too. So even though it hurts when he hits me, it is better for me to be in pain than for you to be in pain, understand? Gu Mingming was so angry that she wanted to chop someone up. She stood on the stool and roared at Leah, ears. Leah transformed his beast ears out of reflex and his smile was too radiant. He took the initiative to send the furry beast ears to Gu Mingming and said, here, the ears that Gu Mingming likes, let you pull them. Chapter 1704. Leah was playing along pretentiously, shouting in pain exaggeratedly and then begging for mercy charmingly. It did not look like he was being punished but more like a couple fooling around. The jealousy on the faces of the other 3 males could not be concealed at all. Elvis sighed and also transformed his beast ears. He laid on the table listlessly as he watched Gu Mingming, who was stomping her feet in anger and rubbing against Leah with all her might. It was as if he was waiting to be caught by Gu Mingming later. Snake and Gregory were even more aggrieved. It was fine if they did not have furry tails, but they did not even have beast ears. They did not have any cuteness that Gu Mingming liked. They would never have the chance to obediently transform their beast ears for Gu Mingming to yell ears at them, and then beg for mercy while acting coquettishly. Baby felt bitter, but Baby would not say it. After making such a ruckus, Gu Mingming was so angry that she rolled her eyes and ignored Leah. She straightened her neck and snuggled back into Elvis's arms. She mumbled to express her dissatisfaction, but she did not say anything substantial to reprimand him. The four males exchanged glances and understood that Li's mischievous policy had basically succeeded. The expression on Gu Mingming's face was no longer as solemn and gloomy as when she was eating. The concept of kinship in the beast world was very vague. In their eyes, a cub should leave the family and live independently once it matured. It was the first time they saw a son like Gu Mingming who had become the leader of the tribe and still had to be protected under their wings. But regardless of the rules in the beast world, they understood that kinship was different to Gu Mingming. The so-called kindness of giving birth and raising was a huge mountain in her heart that she could not cross. Hate she still hated. But she could not hate him so purely. Gu Mingming still cared about that beast father of hers. Or else she should know that with Li's methods, if he wanted to torture someone, that person would be living in hell on earth. As long as she ignored him, not only Leah but Elvis, Snake and even Gregory would do their best to make him beg for death. That was the greatest revenge for what he had done in the past, and also the best way to vent her hatred. But she still wanted to see him. The so-called meeting was just a chance for him to beg for mercy. She might not have realized how conflicted she was, how uneasy she was, and how much she was struggling, but her males saw it all. He ate the meal as if he was chewing wax. He didn't want them to worry, but he pretended that he didn't care. But perhaps she had forgotten how sharp the observation skills of the four males present were, and how much they understood and cared about her. Every single change in her expression could not escape their eyes, not to mention her forced smile. So once Leah took the lead, the other three immediately cooperated with him. There was no other reason other than that Leah was the best at guiding her emotions and dispelling that bit of melancholy between her brows. In the end, he just loved her. In the end, they could not bear to let her struggle and be upset, so if she really wanted to let the three people live, they could also suppress their bestial anger and the desire to destroy in exchange for her peace of mind. Chapter 1705. The so-called refinement hall was a place for internal trials and punishments. The bright tiles could even clearly reflect one's figure, and because of that, the entire hall felt even more bone-piercingly cold, without a trace of warmth. Every step on the tiles produced a clear clacking sound, as if it was stepping on everyone's nerves. The closer they got, the more terrified they became. A naked man knelt in the middle of the hall, with only a piece of rag wrapped around his waist to cover some important parts. A metal chain as thick as a baby's arm was tied around his neck, and the other end of the chain was held in the hands of a muscular man. The muscular man's other hand was holding onto a black leather whip that had been rolled twice. The difference in their sizes made them look like the owner was holding onto his mangy dog. That metal chain was definitely not of this size even for the livestock in the countryside, so it was obvious that Leah had specially made a torture tool. The man who was tied around his neck did not have a single strand of hair on his body, but his skin was not smooth. Instead, it was filled with tiny red spots, looking like a chicken that had shed its feathers after being scalded by boiling water. As there were no clothes to cover it, Gu Mingming could clearly see the tattoo-like marks on the man's body. The various languages were not aesthetically pleasing, and even seemed to be intentionally arranged to humiliate the man. Gu Mingming could recognize Chinese, English, Korean, Japanese, French, and many other symbols that she did not understand. It should be a language of a lesser language. Gu Mingming did not know many foreign languages, but she could still recognize Chinese. So those huge Chinese characters such as lewd, shameless, sinful, heinous, and unpardonable made Gu Mingming understand what was printed on his body, even if she did not know those foreign languages. While Gu Mingming was observing him, Elvis had already carried Gu Mingming to the only seat in the refinement hall, and placed her down. On the third step of the stairs, on the seat that looked like a king's throne, the leader of Fiery Flames did not sit, neither did the Prince of F Country. Instead, a petite woman like Gu Mingming sat upright. Elvis and Snake stood on Gu Mingming's left and right respectively, while Leah and Gregory stood on their outside respectively. Barit did not have the right to stand side by side with them, so he stood on the right side of the stairs, guarding against anyone who would suddenly rush out to harm Gu Mingming. Obviously, in these 3 months, Barit had already secured the title of head horse in the Raging Flames. His fierceness, fighting skills, and absolute obedience without asking for right or wrong had established his position in the gang. The reason was simple. He did not have his own subjective consciousness. Everything he did was directly ordered by Elvis or Leah. He was the spokesperson of the higher-ups. All of his actions were dictated by the higher-ups. Moreover, his strength was outstanding and he had never refused anyone's challenge. But no one in the gang could defeat him. He relied on his loyalty and absolute strength to win the recognition of everyone in the gang. Therefore, the brothers in the gang had to respect him as a protector. It was unknown when this title had become popular, but in short, within 3 months, there was an additional position in Raging Flames. As a result, no matter when, he always stood in the position closest to the leader, but no one felt that it was inappropriate. Aside from the topic, Qing, also known as the ink punishment. The method was to carve a human's face, body, with a knife, then apply ink on the wound so that the color would never fade. In ancient times, it was a punishment of tattooing and painting ink on the face, then it was used on soldiers to prevent them from escaping. Tattooing and painting ink on the human body. Chapter 1706. When Gu Mingming sat down and the rest also stood in their respective positions, the man in the hall tugged on the metal chain in his hands. The hunchbacked man who was kneeling on the ground finally had a slight reaction. His murky eyes started to look around slowly, as if his pupils were not focused, as if he was looking at something but could not see anything. The man was obviously not satisfied with his reaction, so he swung the whip, ruthlessly lashing it on the man's back. That crisscross scar was instantly added with a thick and heavy stroke. The man who was being beaten shrunk his body, but did not dare to dodge or escape. He could only groan in pain like a beast, curling up and trembling like a sieve. There was an indescribable feeling in Gu Mingming's heart. It was not guilt, heartache, pain or sadness. But it was as if there was a ball of wet cotton stuffed in her heart, suffocating indescribably. It was not painful, but it was very uncomfortable. The man kicked the man from behind, and the man sprawled on the ground like a dog. He raised his head and stared at the front for a while, before clearly seeing the person sitting high above like a queen. Then, the pair of turbid eyes gradually began to focus, and the unfocused pupils began to slowly contract. The expression on his face gradually became a little twisted, and his throat subconsciously let out a snoring sound, as if it was an instinctive roar due to the violent breathing that caused his chest to tremble due to the anger. He raised his trembling hand, pointing at Gu Mingming on the high seat. The first thing he said was, "Evil girl. How dare you treat me like this? You are treacherous. Treacherous." The man who picked him up did not understand Chinese, but Barit understood. So without waiting for the rest to react, Barit had already rushed forward, stepping on the hand he was pointing at Gu Mingming. With a crack, it was the sound of bones breaking. Following the man's wail, Barit said coldly without any expression, "How dare you show your claws in front of her? You are overestimating yourself." Leah had already walked down the stairs with a smile, and gestured to the man holding the metal chain. The man respectfully handed the metal chain to Leah, then retreated out and closed the door tightly. The Hall of Refinement was not a peaceful or joyous place, so it was normal to hear any kind of miserable howling coming from this place. Thus the people guarding the door didn't move at all. They only exchanged glances and laughed at the family of 3 for overestimating themselves and actually offending the boss of Furious Flames. In the hall, Leah casually threw the metal chain to Barit and squatted in front of the man. He slowly put on the rubber gloves and said as he put them on, "I've taught you for so long, but I'm still not able to teach you well. This really makes me feel defeated. How many times do I have to say it before you remember it?" It was foolish to provoke an enemy that one could not defeat. And stupidity is a price to pay. At the same time, Leah had already put on his gloves. With one hand he pinched the man's lower jaw, forcing the man to open his mouth. With the other hand he inserted 2 fingers into the man's mouth and crushed a row of his lower left teeth. Yes, he did not pull them out by the roots. Instead, he only crushed the parts outside of the gums. Chapter 1707. Moreover, if this spot started to fester, Leah seemed to be in a good mood. Thinking about how the ulcers in his mouth would remind him that this was the price he had to pay for offending Mingming in the next few months, Lee's lips curled up slightly. If you don't want to eat with your front teeth like a rodent, don't say anything else that offends her. If there's a next time, I won't have such a good temper anymore, understand? With that, Leah patted the man's head lightly, as if he was educating his own disobedient pet dog, with a strange gentleness. The moment Leah touched him, the man could not stop trembling. He was not even that afraid when Leah crushed his teeth, but when Leah patted his head lightly, he was so scared that he peed his pants. A puddle of yellow liquid flowed out from his lower body, and the stench instantly permeated the air. Everyone present had an extremely acute sense of smell. Even a bird like Gregory was a few times more sensitive to smell than a normal human, not to mention Elvis, Leah and Barit, who had an acute sense of smell, as well as Snake, who was a snake that knew where its prey was just by smell. Leah took a step back in disdain, frowning slightly. I said before, what would happen if you pee? Sk, why are you so naughty? Before Leah finished his sentence, the man shrunk even more. He sprawled on the ground, trying his best to cover his pee with his body so that it would not be discovered, as if no one would find out that he was peeing if he hid like that. But what was the use of such a method? Elvis did not want Gu Mengmeng to be contaminated by his dirty breath, so he carried her up and strode away without another word. The rest also did not say a word and just followed Gu Mengmeng out. As they walked out of the refinement hall, Leah used F language to instruct the guards at the entrance. Then the guards used the walkie-talkie to instruct something, and not long after, someone brought 2 black wolf dogs into the refinement hall. The sounds coming from inside were indescribable, but luckily Gu Mengmeng had already walked far away and could not hear them at all. Gu Mengmeng returned to her room, feeling even more depressed than when she saw Wang Suyun yesterday. How should she put it? It was just that it was uncomfortable to be pinched. Leah waved his tail and laid on Gu Mengmeng's knees, wrapping his large tail around her waist. Gu Mengmeng instinctively reached out her hands to rub a couple of times. She was careless, it was just a conditioned reflex out of habit. Mengmeng, I'll take you out to play, okay? Gu Mengmeng was in a daze, as if she did not hear Li's suggestion. Leah was not discouraged and continued, Fei Rui has been recovering well recently and has already been transferred from the sterile ward to a normal ward. Do you want to see him? I'll take you there. Yes, their whole family was against having another male in the family. But if this male could make Gu Mengmeng smile, then their resistance could be dissolved by themselves. But Gu Mengmeng still had no reaction. Leah pursed her lips and gave Snake a look. I'll call Bai Lan and Zhang Jinqing over to play with you for a while? Snake asked softly. Gu Mengmeng still did not respond. Snake sighed silently, then looked towards Elvis. Chapter 1708. Gu Mengmeng's pupils wavered, but she still reacted. She looked up at Elvis with a complicated expression on her face. She didn't say a word. She just laid in Elvis's arms listlessly. Elvis patted Gu Mengmeng's back gently and said gently, as a male, abandoning his own partner to be with another female is a crime worthy of going up on the platform of the deity's punishment in the beast world. Not to mention the fact that he had abandoned the precious female cub, leaving it to suffer and face dangers and difficulties alone. If this was the beast world, the 2 points I just mentioned would be enough to make him a sinner in the eyes of all the males in the beast world. Because he has shamed the word male. Even stray beasts would not take him in. They would gang up on him and kill him in the cruelest way possible. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips. She knew that Elvis was right. It was not hard to understand why normal males would view him as an enemy. It was also easy to understand why the stray beasts would also view him as an enemy. Stray beasts were indeed cruel. They would humiliate and torture the females they snatched. But there was one thing. No matter how cruel, how bloodthirsty, how evil and unbridled they were, none of the stray beasts would turn around and hurt the female who had abandoned them. They were extremely cruel to everyone in the world, including themselves. But they would never do anything to hurt their partners even if they died. Peter was the only exception. He had snatched the female who had abandoned him back. But even though he had snatched her back, he had never really hurt a single hair on Natalie's head. At the end of the day, he still loved her very much. That was why he was able to clear his stray beast identity and let Natalie accept him again. She even mated with him and gave birth to their own child. Wang Xiaoxin said that the thing Gu Mengmeng brought to the beast world was called hope. Peter was one of the hopes she had brought there. He was the last glimmer of hope in the abyss of despair that was the stray beasts. But it allowed them to no longer live like the walking dead. They had to work hard to raise their levels. Once they reached 5th level, they would return to find their own females and try everything they could to make her love them again. although the chances of success were so slim. Just the requirement of reaching the peak of 5th level had killed many males. But at the very least, for the sake of this hope, they restrained themselves and no longer snatched or harmed other females. This was all so that when they went back to beg for mercy in the future, they would have one less reason to be hated. Hence, regardless of whether it was an ordinary orc or a stray beast, they all despised the act of abandoning their partners. So what Elvis said was not wrong. From the perspective of males in the beast world, Gu Mingming's father was definitely a scumbag. Chapter 1709. We can stop torturing them and let them die a quick death. Elvis's face darkened. It was obvious that he was very against this decision. But if torturing these people would make Xiaomeng depressed, then he would rather let himself feel aggrieved. Gu Mingming looked up at Elvis without saying a word. They all understood her, so how could she not understand them? Snake had her shared memories. Snake probably remembered even more clearly what she had gone through when she was young than she did. And whatever Snake remembered, he must have already told the other 3 males in the family. That was why they hated that man to this extent. She was the treasure in their palms, the flesh in their hearts. Gu Mingming was even more precious than their own eyeballs. Just a frown from her could make the 4 men extremely nervous, not to mention those nights where she hugged her knees and cried bitterly in a corner. Those unexplainable grievances and the torment of having to force herself to grow up just to make a living. She was afraid that every single tear she shed had taken root in their hearts, becoming thorns, piercing them with endless pain, engraved in their bones and hearts. That was why they could not forgive that man. That was why Leah would say, this was his revenge, his hatred, he could not let it go. Seeing that Gu Mingming did not speak for a long time, Elvis thought that she was not satisfied. Although he was not willing, as long as she could smile again, there was nothing he could not give in to. If you want to let them go, no. Gu Mingming shook her head. Then, she swept her gaze across the faces of the 4 males in her family. Finally, her gaze landed on Li's face. She said, let that girl who was skinned by you breathe her last. She did not do anything wrong and should not be punished because of her parents' actions. So, let it end and let her die a quick death. All right. Leah would not reject Gu Mingming at such a time. Even though to him that girl was not innocent. After all, she was the one who took everything that belonged to Gu Mingming. What's more, peeling off her skin wasn't to punish her, but to torture her parents who had witnessed the whole process. However, since Gu Mingming had spoken, he would be merciful and let her die a quick death. Gu Mingming continued, as for that man and Wang Suyun, you guys can do whatever you want, I won't ask and I don't want to see them again. But you have to promise me that you will not hide anything from me in the future. The 4 men nodded seriously and made the most solemn promise. Gu Mingming wanted to sweep the matter under the rug and pretend that it had never happened. However, humans might choose to abandon themselves to despair and wait for death under absolute pressure, but if they discovered a gap under this high pressure, they would spare no effort to struggle to the death. A person's desire to live was a terrifying thing. It was enough for one to pass through the heavy defenses and obstacles in a place like the fiery flames to once again stand in front of Gu Mingming. Perhaps because he had some expectations, the man was not as dispirited and listless as he was when they first met, even though he was as skinny as a withered corpse. Instead, his eyes were shining brightly and when he looked at Gu Mingming, his gaze was no different from that of a wild beast. Chapter 1710. Mingming. The man's voice was hoarse and sounded like he was being torn apart. Even though he was purposely trying to appear kind and amiable, his expression and body language revealed too much of his motive. Gu Mingming was born with a childlike face and even though she was thousands of years old, she still had the demeanor of a young girl. This was of course due to the 4 men in her family spoiling her like a princess. Her mentality would naturally affect her looks and figure. So, this scene now gave off the feeling of a human trafficker trying to abduct an ignorant young girl. Gu Mingming took half a step back to avoid the man's outstretched hand. Then she said coldly, this title has already been monopolized by Leah. If you call me that, he will not be happy. The man visibly shivered at the mention of Leah. He must be afraid of being punished by Leah. Just the mention of his name was enough to make him tremble in fear. Gu Mingming's obvious rejection made him not dare to advance. After all, he was here to beg for mercy. If he angered her, she just needed to shout loudly and many people would be attracted. By then he would not be able to escape even if he had wings. Daughter, my good daughter. The man stood at his original spot with his hands crossed on his abdomen. He put on a fake fatherly face and looked at Gu Mingming saying, Fei Fei is dead. I only have you as my daughter now. You are the only bloodline of the Gu family. You are my only kin. Daddy knows that Daddy lost money to you and your mother. Daddy is willing to compensate you. As long as you are willing to give Daddy a chance, Daddy is willing to personally kill that slut who seduced me to avenge you and your mother, alright? Gu Mingming narrowed her eyes with a look of disgust. It was true that she hated Wang Suyun. She was the slut who interfered with her family. But if the man could resist the temptation, how would the slut have any room to act? In the end it was just one slut and the other an unscrupulous scum. That was why they hit it off so easily, wasn't it? Back then, didn't you swear to me confidently that she was your true love, a woman you would protect for the rest of your life? Now how did you become a slut? Gu Mingming gently rubbed her earlobe. Her movement was slow and gentle, as if it was just a habitual action of a young girl. I was possessed for a moment, that's why I did what I did and said what I did. Look, I've already paid the price. I've already been tortured by your boyfriend for a few months. No matter how angry you are, it's time for you to cool down. After all, we are father and daughter and my blood flows in your body. Ha! Gu Mingming laughed coldly and sat down without looking back. Leah, who had unknowingly appeared behind her, caught her in his arms and used his body to protect her completely. He looked at the man in front of him with a cold smile. One had to admit that he was quite capable. After the previous incident, he had already ordered the guards to be more vigilant, but he still managed to strangle the other guard to death with a metal chain when one of them was in the toilet, before running out to face Gu Mingming. However, since Mingming had something to say, he would wait for her to finish first. Chapter 17:11. In order to force my mother to divorce you and make room for Wang Suyun, you smashed the wine bottle at my mother's head right in front of me. Why didn't you consider that we are father and daughter and that your blood flows in my body? When you hit my mother and I from the 7th floor to the 1st floor, why didn't you consider that we are father and daughter and that your blood flows in my body? 4 years old, I was only 4 when you divorced my mother. But you put all the blame on me just because I am not a son. My mother raised me by her side for so many years. My adoptive father's family was dissatisfied with my presence and made things difficult for my mother. What about you? You're not even willing to give me $500 a month for child support. When I'm being called a little beggar at my adoptive father's house every day, why don't you think about the fact that we're father and daughter, and that your blood flows in my body? My adoptive father refused to pay me and I shamelessly went to beg you. Do you know how much courage I needed to muster to knock on your door? But what about you? You allowed Wang Suyun to scold me and hit me. You even blamed me for being impolite to your wife, and for not calling her mother, so I deserve to be hit? At that time, why didn't you consider that we are father and daughter and that your blood flows in my body? Oh, now you have a request for me and are counting on me to save your life. You remembered that we are father and daughter and that your blood flows in my body. Wang Suyun is old and her charm is gone. She is no longer valuable to you. Is she not your wife, your true love? Your father and daughter, is too cheap. I don't care for it. So put away your disfiguring acting skills. It's so bad that it makes me want to puke. Ever since Leah appeared, the man's entire body had been tense. He was afraid of Leah, afraid to the core. Even though Leah had not done anything or said a single word since he appeared and was just quietly and obediently playing with Gu Mingming's hair, he was still trembling and fear was written all over his face. No matter what, I am your father. This you can't deny. The man's voice was trembling as he kept his guard up against Leah. But from time to time, he would glance at Gu Mingming as if observing her reaction. Father? Gu Mingming lowered her eyes as if she was savoring these 2 words. After a long while, she slowly raised her eyes and looked at the man in front of her. She smiled faintly and said, We are father and daughter after all, but you have never accompanied me to the zoo even once. How about this, you accompany me to the zoo to make up for the regret in my life, then I will free you from Li's hands, how about that? Really? The man's eyes lit up as he stared at Gu Mingming without blinking. Gu Mingming nodded with a smile. I never lie. The moment he said that, Leah couldn't help but laugh out loud. Never lie. Who was the one who had fooled everyone in the beast world? Not to mention, why did her 3 famous males all call her Little Liar? Didn't she have any idea in her heart? But Leah would never expose her in front of outsiders. Even if it was an outsider, it wouldn't be long before he became a dead man. Chapter 17:12. The information revealed in Gu Mingming's words was enough for every male to know what she was planning. So everyone smiled at the same time. Elvis took Gu Mingming from Lee's hands and carried her in his arms as if he was carrying a child. Leah put on rubber gloves and pinched the man's shoulder. He smiled gently and warmly. "Let's go, father-in-law." Somehow, the more warm and gentle Leah was, the more afraid the man was. He felt that Gu Mingming's change was too sudden and these four devil-like men agreed too easily. This was the situation he wanted the most, but he just had to feel a strange sense of uneasiness. Leah moved closer to the man and whispered softly, "Gu Mingming is the apple of our eyes. If she is happy, we will be happy. So, father-in-law, you must make our Gu Mingming obedient. If not, if she is unhappy, you will have to go back to the dungeon again." The man shrank his neck when he heard the word dungeon. He nodded hurriedly and stole glances at Gu Mingming. The cunning look in his eyes became even brighter. He could not go back to the dungeon. After he was caught the last time he escaped, he was locked in an electrically connected dog cage by Leah and was not given any food or water for 3 days. He could not even stretch his legs or he would be electrocuted. Up until now, there were still many burns on his skin that were still inflamed by the electricity. If he was caught again, he would be in an even worse state. So he must hold his precious daughter, Gu Mingming, tightly in his hands. As long as he held on to her, the Prince of F Country, the leader of Fiery Flames, would have to address him as father-in-law, just like this pervert Leah. By then, everything he had suffered today would be returned to them in double. So much so that he could step on the royal family of F Country and Fiery Flames to stand at the top of the world. Call the wind and summon the rain, cover the sky with one hand. From then on, no one would dare to say that he, Gu Jigang, was a useless person. As he thought about it, he laughed sinisterly. His uncontrollable excitement made a gurgling sound come from his throat. It sounded rather terrifying. The so-called zoo was definitely not a normal zoo for tourists, but Lee's idea. Snake had used the name of the royal family to enclose the land, while Elvis had used the power of the Fiery Flames to smuggle back all kinds of wild beasts, creating a miniature biological chain. The 4 men of the Gu family were the most familiar with the habits of wild beasts, so they created an environment that was the best for training wild beasts to regain their wild nature. Although it had only been a few months, the wild beasts raised here were far more ferocious than the so-called wild beasts in the zoo. Although it was still not as ferocious as the wild beasts in the beast world, it was already considered a better imitation of the beast world. Walking in this garden, Gu Mingming felt a sense of trance, as if she had returned to the beast world and was bringing her family out to hunt. And this feeling of hers was exactly what the 4 men of the Gu family were pursuing. After all, she had personally said that she wanted to return to the beast world. Since they could not create a door of time and space for her, they could just create a microscopic beast world for her. "You guys go away for a while, I have something to say to him alone." Gu Mingming chose the center of the garden and suddenly spoke. Chapter 17:13. The 4 men were the most at ease in the forest. In just 2 breaths' time, the 4 of them disappeared into thin air. Gu Mingming then turned around and looked at the man, asking, "If you knew this day would come, would you still choose to abandon mother and me for Wang Xuyun?" The man shook his head decisively. "No, my precious daughter, you are daddy's most beloved child. If not for Wang Xuyun, that slut, forcing me with her pregnancy, why would I abandon you guys? Actually, I have long regretted it all these years, but your mother has her own family now. I have already hurt her once, how could I bear to disturb her again? As for you, Sai, daddy is too ashamed to see you, that's why I don't dare to visit you. You don't even know, every year on your birthday, daddy will buy your favorite strawberry-flavored birthday cake, insert the numbered candles that represent your age and then sing a birthday song to the cake alone. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday to Mingming, happy birthday to you. When is my birthday?" Gu Mingming did not wait for the man to finish singing, directly interrupting him. The man was suddenly stunned, as if he did not expect Gu Mingming to suddenly ask such a question. His brain twitched, he really wanted to give himself a tight slap. He could have used any method to clear his name? Why did he have to mention birthday? There were 365 days in a year, that was a 1 in 365 chance, how could he guess? If he guessed wrongly, Mistake, mistake. Gu Mingming smiled coldly, then shook her head slowly saying, "You don't even remember my birthday and you don't care about me at all, right? How could that be?" The man looked a little awkward, but he quickly covered it up with his fatherly facade, swearing solemnly, "Even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs, no matter how heartless I am, you are still my daughter. How could I not feel heartache for you, not miss you? But daughter, you must understand that a father's love is like a mountain. The love that daddy gives you is grand and deep, naturally not as gentle and delicate as your mother, who will always remember different days. Daddy's love is to stand in front of you and protect you at all times, understand?" Gu Mingming nodded as if she deeply agreed. The man then heaved a sigh of relief, feeling that his words of a loving father teaching his daughter were too well said. A textbook example of a loving father. Gu Mingming looked up and smiled at the man, calling out, "Daddy?" The man was so excited that he almost cried on the spot. Gu Mingming had acknowledged him. What did this mean? This meant that the Prince of F Country and the boss of Fiery Flame would have to call him father-in-law from now on. It meant that he would become the most honorable person in the world. From now on, he could do whatever he wanted and squander money however he wanted. If anyone made him unhappy, he would have his sons-in-law kill them. However, before he could complete half of his dream, Gu Mingming continued, "It's time for you to display your fatherly love." What? The man was still in a daze until Gu Mingming pointed to the side with her chin. Only then did the man realize that they had been surrounded by a pack of wolves. Many wolves lowered their bodies and bared their teeth as they stared at Feng and the others, as if they were ready to attack at any time. Chapter 17-14. Gu Mingming sat in the middle of the wolf pack, cross-legged as she watched the man running away in panic. She smiled and her gaze was calm. She did not feel disappointed at all. It was as if the test she gave him was unnecessary. He had never let her down when it came to abandoning her. She had given him a chance. Even if he felt a little guilty towards her, even if she did not expect him to sacrifice himself to buy time for Gu Mingming to escape, as long as he could pull her along when he ran, or even shout at her, "Gu Mingming, run," she would have a reason to let him off. However, he did not pull her along, nor did he shout at her to run together. He did not even turn back to look at her. Moreover, he even pushed her directly into the pack of wolves. His fatherly love was like a mountain. Was it like the Golden Chicken Mountain? Gu Mingming just sat on the ground with the wolf pack surrounding her. There was not a single trace of the fierceness in her eyes. She was as obedient as a dog. Elvis walked out from behind the tree and carried Gu Mingming into his arms. He whispered into her ear, "The ground is cold, let me carry you." Gu Mingming did not object and just let Elvis carry her obediently. Then Snake leaned half his body down from a tree in his half-beast state. His snake tail wrapped around his arm and his body hung in mid-air. He said, "Tuming, are you sure you want to see it with your own eyes?" Gu Mingming did not look up at Snake. She just stared at the man who was being dragged back like a corpse by the snake not far away. A snake as thick as a thigh used its tail to wrap around the man's arm and dragged him towards Gu Mingming. It only stopped when it was a step away from Gu Mingming. It spat blood at Snake as if it was reporting its mission. Snake nodded. That snake then released its tail and slithered towards a tree at the side. It hid in the treetops to spy on the man just now. The arm that was wrapped around by the snake had already turned into mud. Bits and pieces of broken bones poked out from the flesh. That arm was the one he used to push Gu Mingming. I used just the right amount of poison so that he could clearly see how he died, but he could not even struggle. Snake's smile was so cold that it made one's blood run cold. Gu Jigang's eyes widened. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Everything in front of her was too strange. A pack of wild wolves surrounded Gu Mingming like domesticated dogs, and a half-human, half-snake monster was hanging from a tree. He tried to open his mouth but no sound came out. His entire body was numb, and just like what Snake said, his mind was clear but he had no control over his own body. Unbeknownst to him, many small snakes as thick as a thumb had surrounded him. His open mouth had become a playground for the small snakes to explore. One by one the snakes drilled into his body through his mouth. It was too late for him to shut his mouth. With his own eyes, he saw the colorful little snakes burrow into his mouth. He could clearly feel them moving along his esophagus. He even saw his stomach rise and fall like a wave. Then, a small red head burrowed out of his belly button. The smell of blood stimulated the pack of wolves, and they let out low growls as if they were enduring the desire for blood in their bodies. After all, with the Wolf King around, how would they dare to be impudent? Go. Digression, Golden Chicken Mountain. It was said that after a person dies they have to walk the road to hell. The fifth stop on the road is the Golden Chicken Mountain. Chapter 17:15. The one who gave the order was not Elvis but Gu Mengmeng. She patted the head of one of the wolves lightly before leaning into Elvis's arms. Expressionlessly, she watched as the pack of wolves pounced towards her biological father. She knew that he could still hear her words, so she slowly opened her mouth and said without any emotions, "You gave me a sperm and gave me a life. Because of you, I had the chance to meet them, so I should be grateful to you. But you ruthlessly and heartlessly trampled on this gratitude. You abandoned your daughter in the name of true love, and did not bear any responsibility as a father. Now you personally overthrew your so-called true love, just because I, the daughter you abandoned, suddenly have the power to decide your life and death. You don't love my mom, you don't love me, and you don't love Wang Suyun. You only love yourself. It is not a sin if you don't look out for yourself and the heavens destroy you. But, the way you love yourself, you hurt others without the slightest bit of remorse. Until just now, I was still giving you a chance. Even if you still have a shred of conscience, even if you still have some blood ties, even if you don't call for me when you escape, at least don't push me, or, if you plead for Wang Suyun along the way and not push all the blame to her, let me see a little bit of the relationship between husband and wife, then I can believe the two words true love I said that year and spare your lives. Unfortunately, in the end you only love yourself. In front of yourself, everything else can be sacrificed. My mother is like that, I am like that, Wang Suyun and your daughter are also like that." As Gu Mengmeng said, she suddenly laughed. Looking at Gu Jigang, whose intestines had been pierced, she hid half of her face in the shadows like a ghost in the dark night. Her voice was cold, and coupled with the rustling of the leaves in the wind, it sounded like the singing of a wandering soul from hell. Bloodline is a magical thing. That sperm of yours has established a part of my personality that's really like you. Such as selfishness, such as heartless. You could turn a blind eye to the torture I endured when I was young, so I could watch you being eaten by wild beasts with my own eyes and not do anything. If you can push me to the wolves to escape, then I can personally order the wolves to eat you up. I won't leave a dangerous factor in this world who can attack me from behind at any time. If you hate me, remember to turn into a malicious spirit and come back to take revenge on me. Only then will I have the chance to beat you to the point that your soul will fly away and scatter, never to be reborn again." By the time Gu Mengmeng finished her last word, Gu Jigang's throat had already been bitten off by the wild wolves. His entire body had already been devoured clean, leaving only a pool of dirty blood stains and a hideous face with eyes wide open. Snake threw a glance over, and the snake that had been coiled up on the tree after capturing Gu Jigang slowly slithered down. After hissing and sticking out its tongue, it swallowed the head in one gulp. At this point, Gu Jigang had been completely devoured by the pack of wolves and snakes. This person no longer existed in this world. Even his corpse could not be put back together. Gu Mengmeng exhaled heavily through her nose, then lowered her eyes to calm her emotions. Elvis did not say much and just carried Gu Mengmeng out of the forest. There was no other reason other than that Xiaomeng was afraid of seeing blood. Chapter 17:16. Elvis hesitated for a moment before replying, "They went to deal with Wang Suyun." Yeah. Gu Mengmeng did not ask further about how they would deal with Wang Suyun. Because to her, Wang Suyun's identity was much purer than Gu Jigang's. They were purely enemies. Gu Mengmeng would not blame Wang Suyun for Gu Jigang's affair and abandoning his wife and daughter. Because if this man had a sense of responsibility, he would not have given Wang Suyun such a chance. If he had even a little conscience, he would not have been so cruel to her and her mother. Gu Mengmeng had always felt that the man was the main culprit in this affair. After all, if a cow does not drink water, no one can force it. A fly would not bite an egg without a crack. That was probably the logic. Gu Jigang was a man who would not stay by his wife's side for the rest of his life. So even if there was no Wang Suyun, there would be Li Suyun and Jiang Suyun. But this did not mean that Wang Suyun was not at fault for intervening in someone else's marriage and destroying someone else's family, even if there was no Wang Suyun. Gu Mengmeng did not want to criticize all the mistresses in the world on behalf of justice. She only represented herself and hated Wang Suyun for intervening in her life and destroying her family. Even with the passage of time, when she saw Wang Suyun's face, she would still remember how Wang Suyun came home with a pregnant belly and forced her mother to divorce under the guise of true love. She also did not forget how she instigated her father and mother to fight for custody of the house her parents bought when they got married. She used the reason that the father's family structure was more complete and more suitable for the child to grow up. Ah, how ironic. His affair became his advantage in front of the law. She snatched her mother's man as she wished, lived in her mother's house and hid her mother's child. Gu Mingming would not forget the days when she was locked in the hammock and not allowed to come down. Even when she went to the toilet, she had to be careful not to be discovered by her. Otherwise, the phrase "I'll hit you every time I see you" would come true. Gu Mingming would also not forget Wang Suyun's hateful and vicious expression every time Wang Suyun and Gu Jigang argued with each other. She would never forget the slap she had given her on the street as well as the powerful words she had said, "You're not my child, so why should you spend my man's money? Don't be like your shameless mother trying to use your child to pester a man after getting divorced. He's not my son." After 1,000 years of training in the beast world, Gu Mingming understood one principle. Sometimes kindness was not a virtue. Repaying evil with good, how to repay good. Now Gu Mingming believed in karma and the cycle of karma. As such, she did not ask Leah and Gregory how they would deal with Wang Suyun. Because no matter how Leah and Grace dealt with it, it was her retribution for being a mistress. Not every mistress who wrecked someone else's family would receive such retribution. Wang Suyun could only blame her bad luck. The person she had offended was Gu Mingming. And by Gu Mingming's side, there were 4 males who could not bear to see her suffer even the slightest grievance and would definitely seek revenge for anything that happened to her. After that day, no one mentioned anything about Gu Jigang and Wang Suyun. Chapter 17:17. The 4 males in the family were worried that Gu Mingming would be depressed because of this matter. Although she said she did not mind, she still gave Gu Jigang a quick death. Yes, being eaten by wild beasts was already a relatively easy way to die. After all, with Li's methods, Gu Jigang would probably live to 100 years old and die without a way out. But after a few days, Gu Mingming ate and drank as she liked without being affected, so the 4 males in the family gradually relaxed. Snake had always been very busy, especially after Elvis took over the fiery flames. He was no longer the family's only source of income, and even his position as the main source of income was in danger. This made him feel a sense of crisis, so he became more concerned about the family's matters, and became busier and busier. And Elvis, as the first partner in the family, wanted to maintain his position in the family, so he definitely could not let Snake keep suppressing him. In addition to the knot in his heart from 1,000 years ago, he desperately wanted to win Snake for once. So, the first partner and the partner with the mark on his heart fell into a strange competitive atmosphere. Neither of them tried to trip each other up and even cooperated with each other. After all, the money they earned would eventually go into Gu Mingming's pocket. Only a fool would sacrifice his own family's benefits to compete. But while they cooperated with each other, they were also secretly competing with each other. The battle between their claws and fangs was also very intense. Gu Mingming did not stop them from fighting. It was normal for males to be competitive. Elvis had his responsibility and dignity as the first partner, while Snake also had his pride and backbone as a king. If Gu Mingming interfered, it would not be a good thing for either of them. Even the one who was favored would not feel happy. Because, did you think I could not win him, so you asked him to give in to me? The brains of the males in their family had always been abnormal. To them, the most effective way for her to love them was to keep making things difficult for them, and to be pretentious. Being sensible, trying to keep the peace and making compromises in their eyes, it meant that she didn't love them anymore. Her heart was tired, but she did not want to say it. Gregory had also been acting mysteriously recently. She did not know what he was busy with, but he would always greet Gu Mingming before disappearing for the entire day. Gu Mingming felt that it was strange, but she did not probe further. After all, although Gregory was her guardian beast, he was not her man in the truest sense, so he had the right to choose again. After all, this was the modern world, and modern women wouldn't reject you just because you liked someone else. Although Gu Mingming felt a little awkward, she did not force him. Gregory was very good, really very good. He was so good that if he wanted to abandon her to find a complete relationship, she had no right to say anything. What happened? Leah swayed his large tail and lifted Gu Mingming's little chin with his slender fingers. He squinted his eyes to look at her lost expression and asked softly, "Are you hinting at something by showing such a lonely look in front of me?" Chapter 17-18. But Leah did not mind. He swayed his large tail and smiled flirtatiously. His long and affectionate eyes stared into Gu Mingming's without any restraint. His love was deep as he opened his red lips and said softly, "I am also your partner. It is my responsibility and obligation to soothe your loneliness. Don't tell me I can't warm you up just because they neglected you?" The words "neglected you" made Gu Mingming's scalp go numb. She dared to guarantee that if Elvis and Snake heard these two words, they could instantly change the battlefield from F country to her bed. Thinking about how they were competing to see who could earn more money, if it was changed to who could make her unable to get out of bed for the longest time, Gu Mingming shuddered in disgust. She immediately smiled at Leah and said, "My good hubby, please don't say that. I have you by my side, how can I be lonely?" Leah raised his brows and looked at Gu Mingming, who was deliberately trying to please him. He pursed his lips and gave a profound smile. He asked with a look as if he had gotten the upper hand, "Really?" Gu Mingming was really helpless. They had been together for 1,000 years. How could she not understand the obvious "come and praise me" look on Lee's face? Holding onto Lee's arm, Gu Mingming hung her whole body in his arms. She looked up and smiled, saying sweetly, "Of course my hubby is extremely handsome and is the best-looking male in the world. I don't even have time to look at you. How would you have the time to be lonely?" Leah pinched Gu Mingming's chin and kissed her lightly on the lips. "I don't want to compare myself to all the males in the world. Just tell me, am I the most good-looking in our family?" Leah smiled. Gu Mingming felt that there was an infinitely large pit in front of her. If she jumped into it, Elvis and Snake would torture her to death. If she did not jump, haha, Leah could torture her to death without waiting for them to return. Rolling her eyes, Gu Mingming straightened her neck and said, "No, I am the best-looking in our family." She sounded really guilty when she said that. Perhaps when compared to the females in the beast world, Gu Mingming could be considered a heavenly beauty. But in the present world, Gu Mingming was at most above average. This was the temperament and aura that she had accumulated over 1,000 years, as well as the absolute love and nourishment from the 4 men at home. When she first transmigrated, she could only be considered below average in the modern world. As for the males in the beast world, any one of them could kill off a bunch of popular fresh meats in seconds, and the 4 in her family were the cream of the crop. Elvis's fortitude, Lee's seductiveness, Snake's cold arrogance, Gregory's abstinence, they were all at the peak of perfection. Just their faces alone could make people kneel and lick them for a lifetime. If it weren't for the fact that the 4 of them obviously pampered and doted on her, when she stood beside the 4 of them, she would be like a little assistant next to a big star, completely inconspicuous. But now he had to say that he was the best-looking one in the family. How could he not feel guilty? How unconscionable. Leah, on the other hand, deeply agreed with Gu Mingming's words. He nodded his head and agreed with utmost sincerity. "That's true, my Xiao Mingming is the best-looking person in this world." With Leah praising her with such a serious face, she felt even more guilty. Chapter 17-19. Another honeymoon. Gu Mingming thought about it. During the previous honeymoon, it was Cole who used a medicinal worm to trick Leah and try to replace him. In the end, when Leah counterattacked, Elvis and Leah cooperated and put on a show to kidnap her away. After that, when she was the messenger of the beast deity, the family of 3 never separated. After that, Snake and Gregory came back and they became a family of 5, almost inseparable. But when they first transmigrated to the modern world, Snake played a small trick and made Elvis and Leah throw her over a week earlier. So to Elvis and Leah, she had a week alone with Snake. Although this week did not exist in her timeline, to Elvis and Leah, it was a solid 7 days of separation from her. After that, Snake was busy with tribe matters and Leah was arranged by Gu Mingming to treat Quentin's illness, so she had a few days alone with Elvis. Putting aside Gregory, the guardian beast with an empty name, among the proper partners, only Leah had not been alone with her since they came to the modern world. Her partner was very open-minded and magnanimous when it came to other things, but when it came to her, he would haggle over every little detail. So when Leah said that, Gu Mingming understood that he was feeling aggrieved. Hugging Lee's neck and rubbing his face intimately, Gu Mingming smiled and replied, "All right, let's go on a honeymoon. Leah was extremely satisfied. He kissed Gu Mingming's little face and asked, do you have any special place you want to go? If not, can I arrange it for you? Gu Mingming smiled and nodded. Then she leaned into Li's arms and said gently, with you by my side, anywhere is good. Li's heart melted because of Gu Mingming's words. He hugged her even tighter and breathed lightly into her left ear. Biting her delicate earlobe, he whispered, Vixen. Gu Mingming laughed and fooled around for a while, but allowed Leah to carry her back to the room for an afternoon nap. When she woke up, the other 3 men in the house were already back. But the atmosphere around them did not seem too harmonious. Leah must have taken the initiative to tell them about the honeymoon, so the other 3 were obviously unhappy. Seeing that Gu Mingming had already woken up, although Elvis's face darkened, he still took the cup from the bedside out of habit and used his chest to support Gu Mingming. Then he brought the cup to her lips and said in a cold voice that could not hide his concern, the weather has been dry recently, you have to drink more water. Gu Mingming was long used to having a cup of warm honey water delivered to her the moment she opened her eyes, so she naturally did not reject it. She obediently drank the whole cup and smiled sweetly at Elvis, saying, I want another cup. Elvis smiled sweetly. Yes, this was a form of flattery. As long as she ate and drank more, the males in her house would be as excited as if they had been stepped on. Indeed, the words one more cup successfully broke Elvis's black face. His lips were the first to betray him and he could not help but curl up. Following that, his blue eyes changed from the color of the cold night to the depth of the deep sea. It only took him a few breaths' time. First mate done. Chapter 1720. Gu Mingming rested her head on Snake's chest and took the cup of honey water from Elvis. As she drank, she said, Bailan said she is going to hold her wedding with Zhang Jinqing next month, so we have to make a trip back to S City. Do you have time? Snake raised his eyebrows and gave a low laugh. Back to S City. In front of Bailan and Zhang Jinqing, he was Gu Mingming's legitimate fiancé. Although he was the prince of F country, S City was his true home ground in Gu Mingming's territory. I will always be available whenever you need me. He lowered his head and kissed Gu Mingming's cheek. The person who was so cold that he could freeze the air into ice was now like the spring breeze in March. Although he was a little cold, there was a unique gentleness to him. Second partner settled. Taking a deep breath, Gu Mingming looked up at Gregory. He had not been seen these few days. Perhaps he had a new life plan? Suppressing the disappointment in her heart, Gu Mingming only smiled at Gregory and did not say anything else. Since she could not give him a complete set, then she would just let the Birdman go. A bird's eyes were the sharpest and he could clearly see that Gu Mingming was pacifying her first and second partners. Of course Elvis and Snake knew it too. But they were willing to fall for her little tricks and were just willing to be pacified by her. Gregory was still anticipating that Gu Mingming would say something to him, but she only smiled and did not say a single word. By right after his return, although Gu Mingming was not as close to him as her other partners, she had never been so distant. Could it be, what did he do wrong that he did not know? Furrowing his brows imperceptibly, Gregory began to reflect on himself, but he could not come up with an answer no matter how hard he tried. Gu Mingming did not want herself to pay too much attention to Gregory, so she purposely did not look at him anymore. She just snuggled back into Elvis's arms, still holding a big cup of honey water in her hand and sipping it slowly. When she had drunk about half a cup, she then said, You guys are all busy recently, Leah and I have nothing to do and plan to go out for a walk. I'm not busy. Elvis suppressed his voice and said softly. Gu Mingming chuckled and did not reply. She looked at Snake. Snake glanced at Leah coldly and said, I am busy, but no matter how busy I am, I still have time to accompany you. She knew it would be like this. He looked at Leah helplessly and smiled. Then let's go together. I am the happiest when all of you are accompanying me. Leah swayed his large tail and said pretentiously, Xiao Mingming, you're going back on your word again, huh? Gu Mingming shrugged and chuckled. Anyway, you guys always call me little liar, don't you? Forget it. As long as you don't lie to me about that, I won't blame you for anything else. Leah smiled magnanimously, then kissed Gu Mingming on the cheek. I knew we couldn't shake them off, so this honeymoon plan was to travel as a whole family. With that, Leah turned to look at Snake and asked, Your Highness, how is the relationship between F country and H country? Is your title as a prince useful in H country? Snake laughed softly. His lips curled into a proud smile. I don't know if my title as a prince is useful, but US dollars are definitely useful. Isn't that enough? Chapter 1721. Elvis and Snake did not care much about money. Anyway, it was spent on Meng Meng in the end, so it was good. As for whose hands it was spent on, what did it matter? Anyway, with the two of them, one black and one white, the family would not be short of money. So, Elvis and Snake each gave Leah a black card and said in unison, "The password is birthday." It was obvious whose birthday it was. Leah did not hesitate to accept it. Even though he was rich and had quite a lot of money, who would complain about money biting their hands? Right? Gregory did not say a word from the side. It was just that he did not feel very comfortable and awkward. Although he did not have a strong presence, it was the first time Gu Mingming ignored him like this. In the past, although he was the last one and he never objected to any of her decisions, Gu Mingming would still ask him even if it was just a symbolic gesture. But this time she did not even look at him with a questioning gaze. So, she did not intend to bring him along on this honeymoon, right? His heart suddenly felt empty. That feeling of not being able to go up and down made him feel helpless and lost. If he was not by her side, then where should he go? Baby Meng? Gregory could not help but call out softly. Gu Mingming looked up and smiled brightly at Gregory, saying, "It's all right if you have other matters to attend to and cannot come with us. You can go ahead and busy yourself. I'm fine." Gregory had not thought of what to say, so he subconsciously called out her name. Hearing her say that, he could not form a complete sentence out of his messy words. He could only nod his head with difficulty and force out a word, "All right." A journey that could be set off at will, with the support of a strong foundation of money, proceeded exceptionally smoothly. Snake threw the matters of the family to his so-called father, and Elvis handed the matters of the fiery flames to Barit. After the family of three boarded the private plane, Gu Mingming then asked, "Why are we going to H country? You are not familiar with that place." Leah smiled mysteriously, swaying his tail as he leaned against the chair lazily. His long and affectionate eyes scanned across Gu Mingming's face with a hint of deep ambiguity. He said, "You will know when you get there." Gu Mingming shrugged and did not probe further. Actually, ever since she had a cold war with Elvis and Leah in the stray beast camp, the men in the family no longer dared to hide anything from her. She hadn't experienced this kind of "you'll know when you get there" deliberately mystifying for almost 1,000 years. But Leah would never hurt her. He thought that it was probably some kind of strange surprise. Gu Mingming did not probe further. It was a 10-hour flight, and because it was a private plane, it was spacious. Moreover, there were entertainment items prepared for her by her man on the plane. Furthermore, Elvis, Leah and Snake were all by her side, so it was not difficult to kill time. It was just that when they alighted from the plane, the sky was already dark, so Gu Mingming leaned on Elvis's shoulder and said, "Yeah, let's go to the accommodation and rest for a while." Leah, tomorrow, Gu Mingming had wanted to ask Leah what plans he had for tomorrow, but before she could finish her words, she felt a tightness around her waist and was flung out by something. Chapter 1722. After a moment of dizziness, before Gu Mingming could see anything clearly, a handkerchief covered her mouth and nose. Gu Mingming instinctively wanted to hold her breath, but the action of covering her mouth was so perfunctory that it was released in less than 2 seconds. So, just going through the procedure? Then shouldn't she play along and pretend to faint? Gu Mingming was in a daze. A black headgear covered her and her arms were tied behind her back, but it was not a thick hemp rope or leather belt that tied her up. This scarf? And it was made of good quality that would not strangle people. Were kidnappers so humane nowadays and so considerate towards their hostages? Gu Mingming was shoved twice symbolically and pushed into a car. Then there was an extremely exaggerated jolt. Feeling sleepy for some unknown reason, Gu Mingming slowly fell asleep in the jolt. The second before she fell asleep, she was still thinking that the handkerchief covering her mouth and nose did not have the smell of knockout drugs, and that she had held her breath? But why did she still fall for it? When she woke up in a daze, Gu Mingming was even more confused. She was tied to a folding chair, surrounded by dilapidated buildings, and a European stood in front of her. He looked a little familiar, but after thinking for a long time, Gu Mingming could not remember who he was. She just instinctively felt that he was not someone from the beast world, but a European from the modern era. Her first reaction was that he was Harold's subordinate? But he did not make a move in F country and only made a move in H country? Seeing that Gu Mingming had woken up, the man laughed exaggeratedly. Then he picked up a pistol from the table and used the gun handle to smash Gu Mingming's head. However, he did not touch Gu Mingming and just brushed past her face. Gu Mingming looked at the man in a daze, not understanding why he was bluffing to scare her. The man did not explain. He pinched Gu Mingming's chin and turned her face to the side. Then he used the gun handle to mess up Gu Mingming's hair, as if he had just hit her with the gun handle. Gu Mingming turned her head back to look at the man again. She did not say anything, but her face was filled with crazy. "Can you speak English?" The man spoke in an authentic English accent. Before Gu Mingming could reply, he continued, "I hope you don't think that I'm a good person, especially when I'm holding a gun." Gu Mingming was speechless. Why did she feel that this person in front of her was even more abnormal than the males in the beast world? Under Gu Mingming's gaze, the man spoke in English like a drama queen. Gu Mingming had transmigrated when she was in her first year of university. Strictly speaking, her English level was only at high school level, and the last time she used English was about 1,000 years ago. So Gu Mingming did not understand many of the words men said. But she heard him mention words like Leah, smart, mysterious, disappeared, dangerous and secret intermittently. Then a few foreigners entered the house with computers, speaking fluent English that Gu Mingming could barely understand. The man who held the gun and pretended to shoot Gu Mingming smiled. Then a series of gunshots came from outside the house. The man raised his eyebrows and pulled Gu Mingming up from the chair. He pointed the gun at her and walked out. In the narrow and dim corridor, Gu Mingming saw Leah dressed in a Special Forces uniform. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.